Harding. Jerem. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Mr. President.
Here. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for our invocation today by Council Member Amy Melton. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we've got a pretty full room today, but I'd just like to take a moment. We have a lot of visitors coming in over the next 2 weeks to visit Omaha. I'd like to take a moment just to pray for all the visitors, that they enjoy themselves, they have a wonderful and safe time here in our wonderful city. We are very fortunate to be able to host the College World Series every year, and we get to meet people from all over the country that have most of them have never been to Omaha before, and a lot of them I talked to weren't necessarily excited to come to Omaha until they got here, and then they usually want to come back. But as summer begins and the kids are out of school, and we do have so many wonderful things going on in our city, I just like to take a moment to pray for all of the residents that live here and all those that are coming to visit. So hopefully God will bless us all over the next couple of weeks in the summer. So thank you very much.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Omaha City Council. The council thanks you for joining us today. As a courtesy to those in attendance, I would ask you to please turn off or mute any of your electronic devices. Before we begin the major portion of our agenda today, we have a couple of proclamations that we would like to read up. And I think Councilmember Melton and Councilmember Harding are the two that are going to read a couple of very special proclamations. And so the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I think we'll start with the Women's Fund of Omaha. I think we have, you can come on down. Just state your name and tell us where you're from.
Sure. My name's Tiffany Cyber-Eagle. I'm Research and Policy Director at the Women's Fund of Omaha.
And Tiffany, thanks so much for coming down here today. And we're doing a proclamation, much like the county board did a resolution in support of what you're doing right now. So I'd like to start with, whereas the Women's Fund of Omaha is committed to the long-term outcome of a reduction in sex trafficking through decreasing demand, increasing services and supports, and preventing new and continued exploitation. And whereas commercial sexual exploitation is happening every day in Nebraska, with approximately 900 individuals being purchased for sex online every month. And whereas the Women's Fund of Omaha is committed to working with community partners to stop sex trafficking by supporting survivors and increasing accountability for sex buyers. And whereas the Women's Fund of Omaha is coordinating the Not on My Watch campaign to engage elected officials and community partners to raise awareness regarding the signs of sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation. And whereas the Not on My Watch campaign will send a strong message that sex trafficking will not be tolerated in Omaha. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Omaha recognizes and supports the exceptional work of the Women's Fund of Omaha in their Not on My Watch campaign. In witness whereof we have set our hands and caused the official seal of the City of Omaha to be affixed on this 12th day of June of 2018. And yeah, well, and I just want to say, especially today, there was actually a lunch, I know, with the Women's Center for Advancement, and I know the Women's Fund works in conjunction with. They had a wonderful speaker, absolutely fabulous. Her name's Freddie Gray.
She was fantastic.
And so it also shows that various organizations work together, various elected officials, spouses of elected officials, are doing so much to help victims of domestic violence and sex trafficking become survivors. And the key is, you know, earlier I prayed for everybody in Omaha, but I'd like to pray for those victims that they have the courage to become survivors, that they have the courage to come forward and accept the help that actually the Women's Fund and the Women's Center for Advancement are there to provide. But if you could tell us a little bit, this is the first year that you're doing Not on My Watch, which I know we're going to embrace, and there is going to be a public conference on this on Thursday at 3:30. I think we're going to be there. So could you just tell us just a little bit about the Not on My Watch?
Sure. So the Women's Fund is happy to partner with many providers in the community, many elected officials, other leaders and survivors of sex trafficking to kick off this Not on My Watch campaign. There will be a press conference on Thursday at 3:30 at the downtown Marriott, and you're all welcome to join us. We'd love to have you. There will be a number of elected officials speaking. We will also have volunteers coordinated to hand out this campaign swag during the College World Series. It's got signs of trafficking on the back. So what we're really trying to do is build awareness so that people, if you see something, you say something, and send a strong message from our community that trafficking will not happen on our watch. So we are grateful for your partnership. I will leave some swag for you all. I got you all t-shirts. So you can wear these shirts and also send the message, not on your watch.
Thank you. Before you leave, though, I think Councilmember Festerson had a couple of things he wanted to say as well.
Sure.
So, Mr. Festerson.
Well, thanks, Mr. President. I also just wanted to note what an inspirational event the Women's Center for Advancement lunch was today, and especially Freddie Gray, who was a very courageous and inspirational speaker today for sharing her story, which I very much appreciated. But then secondly, a couple of items I wanted to also bring to everyone's knowledge. One of which is we recently talked to the police chief about sexual assaults in our community. And that number is growing and is up in terms of violent crime. I think similar to other cities, however, it's we think and hope it's mostly an increase in reporting of incidents that are happening and probably were happening previously, but just weren't encouraged or weren't reported by victims. So in that sense, we hope that proportion of it could be positive, that people are being encouraged to report and talk about it and talk to law enforcement about incidents they may have had in their lives. And then secondly, along those lines, bring to everyone's attention a new state law that's going into effect that I know you were involved with and others too, that starts in July and allows sexual assault victims to report their incidents anonymously to law enforcement when they're presenting at trauma centers and emergency rooms, so that they can get the health care they need and not be intimidated by whatever situation they may be in, but also encourage that reporting to law enforcement, which is very important to this issue. So those are a few things I wanted to mention, and I also appreciate your work this week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Melton, do you want to present the proclamation?
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Mr. Harding, I believe you're up next.
I'll wear the sunglasses. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor of doing a proclamation for Tom and Sheila Pettigrew. And if Tom and Sheila would please come to the microphone. So, whereas Brush Up Nebraska Paint-a-thon started in 1989 when 4 local companies saw the need to assist low-income elderly and permanently disabled homeowners to maintain their homes, and whereas Brush Up is made up of many volunteers who plan for 1 weekend a year to paint anywhere from 60 to 90 homes at no cost to the homeowners, and whereas Executive Directors Tom and Sheila Pettigrew built the Omaha program from the ground up. And whereas the 29 years the Pettigrews managed fundraising and the day-to-day operation of Paint-a-thon, and whereas Tom and Sheila helped launch and mentor numerous programs throughout Iowa, Montana, and Wyoming, and several other small communities throughout Nebraska, and whereas Brush Up Nebraska Paint-a-thon reached a new milestone in 2017 of homes painted totaling 2,834 over the last 28 years. And whereas after 29 years, Tom and Sheila are retiring and will leave Paint-a-thon in a strong position to carry on helping more families in the future. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Omaha recognizes August 18th as this year's Paint Day. And be it further resolved that the City Council congratulates Tom and Sheila Pettigrew on their retirement and thanks them for their many years of service to Omaha. In witness whereof, we have set our hands and caused the official seal of the City of Omaha to be affixed on this 12th day of June, 2018. Congratulations. So, and for the record, if you could, just give your name and address and maybe a couple parting comments and maybe some references to the future, which I know some board members are here too.
Well, we are Tom and Sheila Pettigrew, 4221 North 164th Street in Omaha. And the rest of it I've forgotten already. Number one, I thank you for the recognition of Paint-a-thon. The vast majority of our homes are in Omaha. Although we serve Douglas, Sarpy counties, and Council Bluffs, the majority of our homes come from Omaha, and we're proud of the work that has been done by so many people, all free, volunteers that are many thousands, gallons of paint, huge, hours of volunteers in the hundreds of thousands, actually. And I know, Councilman, you have worked on Paint-a-thon. I appreciate that. Maybe some others in here have. But it's a wonderful program that helps people who just simply can't do this work themselves. They can't physically do the work, and they can't afford to pay a professional to do the work. So we're not taking work away from anybody. We're doing things that help save the home, help make the home more efficient, energy efficient, by closing holes in the siding and all kinds of things around the windows, and I suppose the best thing you can say about Paint-a-thon is that it brings hope to people who generally don't have a lot, who don't get a lot, who are living on fixed incomes, and if their home goes, it's a disaster for them. And there's no saving it, and this is why you know this more than I do, how many homes you are having to tear down because they've just deteriorated to nothing. And we believe that we are a source of saving those homes, and our volunteers it's a win-win situation. They love the homeowners they work with, they love the program, they love doing the work and standing back and seeing this rewarding experience in life. I mean, it's just amazing to see the difference between the homes that we start from zero, scrape, prime, paint, and make a relationship with a human being that is so important to the program. Our corporate sponsors are wonderful. They've been with us for many years. And we appreciate them. I'd love to list them, but you know, in the essence of time, I won't. But I thank you. I think this recognition is good for the program. Sheila and I appreciate it, and we just move on to other things.
Thank you.
Our president and vice president are here today. Kelly Souter and Dennis Ross, and they're supporting us. And that's also a sign of a healthy program, in that our board is committed to helping also, and they're participants. They're not just on the sideline. So.
Thank you. Just one more comment that I'll make, and some others might want to say some things, but you mentioned too about hope from the homeowner too, and thank you for mentioning that I had participated when I was with a previous employer, what was Security National Bank. We always participated in that, and the usually the people that live there you would always form a bond with by the end of the day, because you're there, you know, when sun comes up, starting on the job, and probably there till late in the afternoon. But, you know, most of the time, the homeowners, you know, they would come out with iced tea or lemonade or cookies that they made, and just that relationship, that hope that you give them that you mentioned, I think was really important. And they, the gratefulness that they had for people taking the time to invest in them, I think was truly appreciated.
That's pretty much our reward for the program.
Yeah.
Personally, it's just the help and the appreciation of the homeowner.
Yeah.
Ms. Melton, you have your light on.
Yes, well, I want to know, because there's a whole bunch of people in this room, if anybody was interested in volunteering, like any of the college students that I see lining the back there, you look like you'd be perfect people to help volunteer and paint in August. Right before I think it'd be right before school started, so it'd be the perfect time. But where could we go to get more information? Who could we contact?
We have a website, brushupnebraska.org, and it has all the information on exactly what it takes to be on a team, or to build a team, or just to be a personal volunteer. Our phone number is 402-965-9169.
Perfect, brushupnebraska.org. So if anybody wants to get on there and get more information or be a volunteer,
Right.
it sounds great. So
We are
hopefully,
in the middle of
hopefully
that.
we'll all be on your list at least, so we know when it is, and we can forward that to anybody that we think might be good volunteers too. Thank you,
Thank you.
for everything that you've done over the years for our community.
Thank you.
And one more item of business before we begin with our main agenda. We have some high school students here from several high schools, North, South, Northwest, Central. Hope I didn't leave anybody out. If I did, charge it to my head, not my heart. But I wanted our students to stand up and be recognized. They are part of a group that one of our former members of city staff here, Paul Landau, is bringing down, and they're learning about city government. And so wanted to take the opportunity to recognize our high school students that are involved in and is learning as much as they can about city government. Thank you for being here. Hope you enjoy the city council. Madam Clerk.
Items 6 to 9 relate to the same project and can be considered together for the Brynhaven at Hanover Falls Replat 3, located at 8485 North HWS Cleveland Boulevard. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. B is communication in opposition to the rezonings. Item 6, an ordinance to rezone this property from DR District and R6 District to R6 District. Item 7, an ordinance to rezone this property from DR District and R6 District to DR District. Item 8, a resolution to approve the final plat for Brynhaven at Hanover Falls Replat 3. Item 9, a resolution to approve an amendment to the Brynhaven at Hanover Falls Replat 3 subdivision agreement.
Public hearing agenda items numbers 6 through 9 are today. Proponents, please.
Jason Thielen, E&A Consulting Group, 10 Mill Valley Road, Suite 100, Omaha, Nebraska. Here on behalf of the applicant. Afternoon, Chair and members of the council. This is was a minor plat submitted back in August or September-ish, and the preliminary plat has gone through, and so this is the final plat that represents the final zoning and the final plat of this property now here before you today. With me as well is Bill Fugate, who is the president of the HOA. In case there are any questions for him specifically, he'd be happy to answer those questions. So again, it's a minor plat, roughly located at HWS Cleveland and State Street. This is a townhome community. Everything's pretty much a single-family attached unit, and this is some surplus property located within the HOA. And so they took a vote. So let me step back just a little bit. So that preliminary plat was approved at Planning Board in December of 18, and I believe it was on consent. And then the City Council, you guys approved this in February 27th with no opposition, I believe. The zoning, as you can see, is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. The development reserve is exactly that. This was supposed to maybe potentially would have been a post-construction or some detention cell. Turns out they didn't need it. And so development reserve by nature is exactly for that. It's reserved for future development. And at this juncture, the homeowner association decided to go ahead and redevelop that into basically a 3-lot plat. The units are similar. They'll be single-family attached, and the constructions of those units will be at the same level or higher in that neighborhood, and therefore it's the same density. So there's really just adding some additional units within this great neighborhood. This did go to a vote. They had to have 75% of their members vote for this project. They had 73 votes returned, which was 75%, and 58 were yes, and 15 were no. And I know we do have some opposition to it, but it gives you some background on that. And I'll reserve some time for rebuttal, and if you can ask a question myself or Mr. Fugate, we'd be happy to answer that.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Yeah, if you wanted to come to the mic, please. And you two gentlemen? Sure, if you could come down to the front, and one of you can sit and one of you can present, and we'll go from there.
My name is John Everett Jr. I'm a resident at 8425 North 161st Plaza. The property owner is Tracy Johnson. She begs your understanding of her not being here. She suffers from juvenile rheumatoid arthritis and does not usually leave the home too much, and it would be difficult for her to get here. So I'm here to answer any questions on her behalf. I had sent down a email/letter outlining 5 points that I want to bring to your attention. Less than 2 years ago, when Tracy bought the property, it was represented by the sales agent that this surplus property was to be eventually developed as a park. I understand that it was a sales agent that represented it that way, but that representation has been made to other people who have purchased property there as well. The vote that they took, I don't consider, and I'm not an attorney, to be legal or legitimate, to say the least. A person not voting in the neighborhood was considered to be a yes vote. That would be like you guys floating a bond issue and saying any registered voter that didn't show up is a vote for the issue. And I don't think that would fly. So regardless of how many votes they consider for approval or how many they consider voted against it, if you didn't show up that day or you didn't send your ballot back, if you were vacationing overseas, you voted for it just by default. To my knowledge, there's never actually been a certified accounting by a certified public accountant or some certified person to determine whether or not the neighborhood was in such financial distress that it needed to sell this property. The neighborhood is a neighborhood that owns their streets and fire hydrants and sidewalks and has to pay for the upkeep and maintenance of those items. A study should also have been conducted that would look out 5, 10, 20 years to determine what the cost would be for a neighborhood of this size and the demographics of the individuals who live in it, as to whether or not we could operate as a governmental type body and maintain those kinds of structures. If I'm not mistaken, they want approximately $60,000 for this lot. $60,000 would pave about 80 feet of a residential street. So the $60,000 is not even a real good stopgap. They say they can't do an assessment, like a one-time assessment, to raise enough money to make the repairs, replacements, or whatever it is they want to do with this money, because the people can't afford it. The demographics, as I understand it, would be that it's an elderly population, most people probably operating or living on a fixed income, and many probably have either a husband, wife, male, female type partner, not unlike myself, who has turned into more of a caregiver than, you know, than a just married kind of a scenario person who's gone out and bought a home. So if you can't assess the property owners now, and you want to sell this property and raise $60,000, then what are you going to do in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, when you're forced to assess the property owners for these kinds of things? It's my understanding that they just spun the garbage collection off from the association, the company, a company that the association had been paying, to another company who will be paid more money by the SID. Well, all they've done is taken it from association dues to SID property taxes. So, you know, they're not fooling me by saying that they saved me $10, because they're going to kick it into the SID, who's going to include that into the tax base of the property owners. So eventually, the streets, sidewalks, light poles, whatever the case may be, are going to end up either in the city of Omaha, Douglas County, or the SID, because they're eventually going to become unaffordable to the residents because they cannot be assessed because of the age of the people who live there, or the association dues can't be raised high enough to cover these things. No property in the neighborhood has actually been sold off, and nobody's ever built a structure to be sold to a resident other than the original developer. So if, regardless of the agreements that are made, if the builder says, well, I can't find that siding, I can't find those bricks, I can't find those garage doors, I can't find those doors, I've got to use something else, then those structures they want to build are not going to look like all the others. It's just simply, you know, not realistic to assume that somebody's going to duplicate it, you know, board for board, brick for brick.
Can we get you to kind of wrap up here pretty quick?
I just got one more
All right.
thing. There are no other single-family detached structures in the community. And in my opinion, it is not compatible with the existing structures that are there. I would like to see the council either flatly deny the rezoning, or if you're going to lay it over, or if you are inclined to go ahead and vote yes, then I would like it to be based upon giving me a first option to purchase the property, like 60 days to negotiate with the association to buy the property. So that's all I have to say, unless
Okay.
you have questions.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard? Yes, sir.
My name is Tony Mayer, Anthony Mayer legally. I live at 8502 North 161st Plaza, right adjacent to the proposed development. And I've sent a letter to the council, to the city clerk, and she's probably given it to you, so I won't repeat that today. But I will say that if they build the duplex as proposed on the lot as it's designed, out of the 100 townhomes that will then be in Burnhaven Falls, my property and the one they're building right next to me will be the only two properties out of the 100 that will have their living room windows 20 feet apart, looking directly into the other two houses. Everyone else has got much more space in between them. Usually it's a 10-foot property line, then a street, and then another 10-foot. So I think there's a big difference between 20 feet and 44 feet. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, do the proponents wish any rebuttal time?
Jason Thielen, E&A Consulting Group, 10909 Mill Valley Road, Suite 100. Just a couple things as it relates to the vote. Talking with my client, they only counted the votes that are actually returned. So any of the votes that were not returned were not counted as yes votes. So that vote out of 75, 73 returned, 58 returned yes, 15 returned no. The remainder of the 98 were not counted as yes votes. And that was verified by two members off of the board when they did that vote to ensure that they were staying with whatever their covenants are as far as they've taken a vote with their homeowners. As far as the street infrastructure goes, this infrastructure that's here is already in. It exists today. There's a sanitary sewer stub and some water that needs to be added, but it is a sanitary improvement district, and that district will be putting that infrastructure in for those 3 lots. And so it's not an additional assessment outside or out of anybody's pockets personally. Additionally, going beyond the taxes. As far as the location of units, so that picture, that's not showing up very well. Better. So between the houses, there's about 16 feet between those houses, and most of the structures are like that as you look at inside the neighborhood. Here's another good picture of houses that are 20 feet apart. And so the setbacks aren't any different than what's within that neighborhood for these adjacent lots. They have to maintain the same zoning, the R6 zoning requirements that's existing there today. And so nothing outside of those setbacks is being asked for a waiver or anything like that to allow us to build these homes. So outside of that, I have no further questions.
Thank you.
No further comments.
Thank you. Public hearing is closed. Mr. Harding.
Mr. Thielen, I had a couple questions for you. Do you have a copy of the original plat that was done for this development?
I suppose in my files back in my office, I do.
I just wanted to kind of go back through the history a little bit about this development as well.
Sure.
I don't know if we can get a little tighter on that, but I think I don't have the year on this. Maybe Ms. Rockwell can help me out on it. But this is, I believe, the original plat that was done in 2006. Thank you. And I believe it shows, if you could help me out maybe with, okay, those. Okay, Mr. Mayor's residence, I believe, is where the circle is. Right here? Yes. And then,
It's on. Okay.
and then what was originally proposed is next door. Then is another attached single family 2 residences, a little open space of a little triangle. Mm-hmm. That X, and then I think there was going to be another unit there as well.
Correct.
So then, I think the reason we're here today then is then administratively there was a lot split done couple years later, and I'm not sure if you have that plat. Do you have the administrative? Okay.
This was done by another company, so.
Okay. Okay, so I think that Mr. Mayor is the lot 2, and it says Mayor there. And then, so that was the administrative lot split that was done. And it shows then lot 3, the open area, which is now the area that we're here today to discuss. And so that was done administratively. And the reason we can't do that administratively, again, is because you can't do an administrative lot split twice.
Well, I'm more than doubling.
Okay.
So I'm going from 1 lot to 3.
Right. So now, and again, I just thought that history, and now if you could put up what's proposed, I think you have that.
I do.
Okay. Actually, do it on the other one. I think that, so you can stay there at the microphone. So now what we're here to discuss today then is those additional 2 attached, and then 1 single-family residence detached.
That's correct.
And so I think what was originally proposed was really 4 residences. Now we're actually at a point where it's only 3.
Yeah, originally it was 6, according to the first replat.
Okay.
It was 6, then went to, looks like 3, and now we're here adding 3 more, so 5.
Okay. So net loss of 1
Net
from the
loss of
original
1.
plat. Your math is better than mine.
I work with engineers. They
Okay.
force me to add.
So-
correctly.
So, and I understand Mr. Everode's concerns, but I think we need to remind ourselves what we're here today is to act upon the rezoning and replatting. We're not here to make determinations of violations of HOA bylaws or representations of sale agents or accounting issues with the HOA. I'm sympathetic to those concerns, but it's not what we're here to consider today. So I just wanted to make sure that I kind of, for a little bit of history, to understand how we got to the point where we are at today, and going through that process and understanding some of the concerns of the neighbors. But I think those might become more of a legal issue rather than one of what we're here today to consider, the replatting and the rezoning of the property.
I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There are no more lights. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve items 6 through 9. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Harding,
Yes.
Jerem,
Yes.
Melton,
Yes.
Pauls,
Yes.
Palermo, Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 6 through 9 are approved 7-0. Item 10, an application to consider a Class C liquor license for Culprit Midtown LLC, doing business as Culprit Cafe, located at 3201 Farnham Street, number 6112. A's communication from the Chief Building Inspector.
Public hearing on agenda item number 10 is today. Proponents, please.
My name is Luke Mabey. I'm the owner of Culprit Cafe and Bakery.
Thank you. You just here to answer any questions we might have?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard on item number 10? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Motion to approve contingent upon permits.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve, subject to gaining the proper permits. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Harding,
Yes.
Jerem,
Yes.
Melton,
Yes.
Pauls,
Yes.
Palermo, Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 10 is approved 7-0.
Thank you.
Item 11, an application to consider a Class I liquor license for Archetype Coffee LLC, doing business as Archetype Coffee, located at 1419 South 13th Street, Suite 101. A's communication in opposition.
Public hearing on agenda item number 11 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon, President Gray and members of the council. My name is Sean Kelly, 2804 South 87th Avenue. Appearing today on behalf of the applicant, doing business as Archetype Coffee. This is the second location, locally owned and operated. The original is in the Blackstone District. This will be on South 13th Street. And just with respect to the opposition letter that the council received, I think it's important to note the nature of this business. It's open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5:30. Then on the weekends from 8 to 3. So we don't anticipate any problems with the neighborhood or any other businesses in the area.
Thank you.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would also note that there's no liquor license next door, as the opposition says. This is the old Bumper and Auto. I think the sports car garage is to the south, and an undeveloped but to be redeveloped building is to the north of this. So, I would encourage the opposition, while we welcome it, that you be accurate in what you're saying, because putting something out there like that, to me, would be misleading if we didn't correct the record. Do you agree, Mr. Kelly?
I do. Thank you, Councilman. I totally agree. In fact, after the pre-meeting, I did go down in the area. I didn't see any other notice. But having said that, this area is being redeveloped. Should there be another application in the future, it wouldn't shock me if there was, but at this time there is not.
I mean, there's the old theater building that's down there that when I went through it had been taken down to just brick walls and a dirt floor.
Yeah.
And then to the north of that, I forget what the business had been, but it has potential for some other retail type establishment. And then across the street, I didn't see anything. And I mean, Mr. Palermo and I are down there. We share that very close boundary line. We're down there regularly. And the closest establishment I could find was Kurt and Clyde's down almost to Martha by the Sokol Hall.
That's right. And the Casey's to the north would be the only other one.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 11. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 11 is approved 7-0. Item 12, an application to consider a Class I liquor license for Dana One Consortium, Inc., doing business as Acadian Grill, located at 725 North 114th Street.
Public hearing on agenda item number 12 is today. Proponents, please.
Afternoon, Dan O'Brien, 5515 Howard Street.
Here to answer any questions we might have.
Yes, I am.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Ms. Melton.
Yes, I was just curious, what are you going to be serving that's different? So tell me a little bit about.
Well, this is a Cajun restaurant.
Okay.
As far as alcohol, we'll just do craft beers, wine by the glass and bottle. And we're not going to mix any drinks. I don't have the space and don't really want to get into that, but we're going to offer some single malt scotch and market it as sipping whiskey.
All right, and Cajun food?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, well, glad you're there.
All right.
There's no other lights. Is there a motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 12. There are no lights. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 12 is approved 7-0.
Okay, thank you.
Item 13, an application to consider a Class I liquor license for Flying Timber LLC, doing business as Flying Timber, located at 1507 Farnham Street.
Public hearing on agenda item number 13 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, Matt Wyant. I'm the owner, 15909 Vernon Avenue.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, welcome, Matt. Sorry I couldn't get down there. I thank you for the
No problem.
invitation. It was kind of a crazy week, but I did spend some time looking at the internet as to other places like yours around the country, and wanted to talk to you a little bit about the concept and maybe some restrictions that you'd agree would be prudent for such a business. The biggest concern that I've heard is that once you cross the line into the throwing lanes, so to speak, that the alcohol would come across and then people would be throwing the axes with the alcohol, and it could be kind of a dangerous situation. And so to look at kind of analogous situations in Omaha, we have gun ranges, and we have the Harry R. Koch city-owned facility. Some of them, there's no alcohol. Once you cross a certain line, you can go back. The Harry R. Koch, you can't drink before you shoot. So I wondered what restrictions that you would have for safety purposes, given that you're mixing the drinking with the axe throwing.
Sure. Well, I mean, as the business owner, we're not going to allow anything that's going to put our business in jeopardy or anyone else in jeopardy. So, you know, we will not allow access to the facility for people who appear to be under the influence. We have throwing coaches that are tied to the throwing lanes. They have no other function other than to supervise those lanes and ensure everyone is being safe. So there would not be any intoxicated individuals participating. That would be noticed, and that person would be asked to leave, just as a matter of just responsibility. And we're also not a bar. You can't come in and just order some drinks and hang out and whatever else. So these are for our participants. It's a family-friendly facility. As you get more into evenings and weekends, it turns into probably more adult activity. So safety is important. The difference, though, when you're talking about firearms, I think there's a little different level with shooting a gun than throwing darts with an axe or bowling but with an axe. And these are not very large, heavy axes. These are smaller, hatchet-sized axes. So I do have a letter here from our insurance company. He is the largest insurer, as far as I know, in the country. He insures a couple dozen of these facilities. The overwhelming majority of them have liquor licenses. And as you said, you spent some time online, I'm sure you saw that there's not stories of axes sticking out of anybody's head or any kind of crazy accidents. It's very safe, in part because of the business owners, such as myself, ensure that we have a safe environment.
And I forget, I was also surprised, I don't know if they call it the National Federation of Axe Throwing or Association, but there is such a thing,
Yes.
Which kind of surprised me. But what secures the area, the throwing area, the lanes for the untoward axe? So say, for example, Mr. Gray has a strong grip and he would never have this happen. But what if I took this thing back and that thing flew back? What's behind me to protect the?
Really just distance. So you'd have to take a pretty forceful swing backwards to throw an axe. We've overbuilt our facility, we think, in a few key ways. As you probably have seen online, a lot of facilities you have two targets but no real separation wall between them. We have a fenced wall that separates every single target. That wall goes back 20 feet, but where you're standing to throw is between 12 and 15 feet. And beyond that lane, there's another 5 to 10 feet before you would have anybody standing behind there. So we've created a pretty large kind of buffer zone around anybody throwing an axe, just in case there's an accident or something like that. There's rubber matting on the floors, so if the axe misses a target or falls down, it doesn't bouncing around, come ricocheting back, things like that.
And it may sound silly, but I'm going to use the silly example.
Sure.
But to make a point. I seem to recall a Johnny Carson episode where Johnny kind of went up against the wall and then there was the knife thrower, right?
Yeah.
So there's no human people allowed forward of the throwing line, is that correct? Yeah.
So there's multiple things in place. There's a lot of little details that come into how we operate. The number one safety rule is there's only one person in a lane if that axe is out of the holder. So we have at every lane, next to the lane, more than halfway down, there's a spot where that axe goes. And one of the functions of our throwing coaches is they're always making sure that there's only one person in that lane, that no one starts walking out to hand the axe to somebody else, which could result maybe it being dropped in someone's foot or something like that. There's no trick throws or underhanded or backwards, any of that kind of stuff. We allow 2 throws in our facility. It's a 2-handed overhead or a 1-handed overhead. We have a wristband system that ensures that everyone that is in that facility has been check process. Someone has had a face-to-face conversation with them, which in part plays into our alcohol safety. So little steps along the way, but mainly our throwing coaches being on that lane and doing nothing but watching what's going on at all times is how we ensure that everything stays safe.
Are people allowed to hold the can of beer or bottle of beer or a open container while they're throwing?
Not since you brought it up, no sir.
Okay. Is that a condition you'd be willing to agree to?
Absolutely.
In terms of, you said you'd have a wristband system, so are there minors allowed in the establishment who can
Absolutely.
throw?
Yeah.
So you would agree then to have a wristband system?
Mhm.
Yes?
Yeah, so anyone who...
Is that a
anyone-
restriction you'd be willing to agree to?
No, it's already one we have in place.
All right, so you'd be willing to agree to
Yes, absolutely.
and then in terms of the throwing lanes, there's no alcohol allowed into the throwing lane, not just holding it, correct?
The physical lane where someone's standing in the process of throwing axes, no, there is no alcohol allowed in the lane.
Okay.
In the common areas around the lanes, yes, there is.
What then are your hours of operation?
It will vary. Initially, starting out will be evenings, probably 4 to 9, Monday through Thursday. And then Saturdays will probably open at 10, run to 10-ish. It will depend a lot on, what the volume of traffic is. This coming week or two, we expect we might have a few later nights with World Series and try to open up a little earlier because of the World Series. And then once we have a little larger staff, we plan to also open up during the day. We're in a great spot in the middle of a lot of businesses and high-rises to where we can open up around the lunch hour and let people come in, during the day and participate.
Do you allow consumption of shots?
No. The only alcohol that we'll be doing, it has to come in a can. No bottles, no mixed drinks. We're keeping it very simple. Again, we're not a bar, so we're not going to have conventional bartenders mixing drinks and things like that. So our intent is to keep it simple. We don't have a worry then of drop glasses or things like that. So if it comes in a can, craft beers, regular beers, a few wines in a can that we found that are popular with people.
What about what I call the high octane canned products like Whoop, you know what, and
I'm not familiar.
Mad Dog and all those others?
No.
It's high concentrate, high alcohol, distilled spirit mixed with beer.
We'll have a selection of craft beers, your standard, Michelob Ultras, Budweisers, things like that. Then we'll have a few wines in a can.
What about other forms of objects that could be thrown? Anything else besides these short-handled axes? No knives, no other kind of weapons?
No.
What I would call what you see in the martial arts?
No, the only thing that will be allowed to be thrown are axes, and everyone is identical. We maintain them, we know that they're safe, and it's, again, just in keeping with the safety.
Will you allow other forms of weapons onto the property in the licensed premise?
Specifically to be thrown?
No. Say I just am a concealed carry kind of guy. I want to bring my Glock in.
Well, it's not for me to, my personal opinion is I don't have an issue with that. Obviously, you are aware of what the laws are regarding alcohol and concealed carry just as much as I am.
So there's nothing to prevent someone who has a concealed carry permit from wearing it on them while they're drinking and throwing the axes. You don't, as a business, restrict that.
No, I would not restrict someone following the law regarding concealed carry. I would not know. Now, if someone is concealed carry and they are consuming alcoholic beverages, I would not know that, but our systems in place would not allow that person to become overserved and intoxicated. And if we were to determine that someone had become overserved or was appearing to be intoxicated, they would not be allowed to participate anymore. They would be cut off. If need be, they would be asked to leave the facility, and if need be, their group as well.
Are there leagues that form, that people join, and then they're organized, and they have their certain league night of competition?
There are. We won't do that initially right off the bat. It'll take us a little bit just to kind of get up to full capacity and speed, but we anticipate doing leagues.
I kind of draw an analogy to the old dart leagues. I don't know what happened where people used to throw the darts. I still have a brother that's in dart leagues, not the plastic ones, the real ones. And you know, you're very much analogous to that, but you have a much larger object, which, you know, when you're talking about grip, I don't know how people, if they lose their grips or things like that, that kind of concerns me a little bit with the alcohol. But I think I'm convinced from what I've heard you agree to in terms of your restrictions that you will abide by, that I'm comfortable with a recommendation in favor. Ultimately, the Liquor Commission will decide what happens with your license application. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, President Gray. If I could just add along the lines of safety, because my friends would like to make us all part of that Johnny Carson skit. Tell me how the retrieval process works after something is thrown.
Sure. So again, so you're the only person that's in that lane space. So your axe is either laying on the ground. I'm sure not in your case. I'm sure it's stuck nice and firmly in the board. You grip that handle and you push down and it pulls itself out of the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more lights. Is there a motion?
I would motion to approve subject to the agreed upon restrictions.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 13, subject to the certain restrictions. There are no more lights. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 13 is approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
We still have to see that.
All right. Got to practice first.
Item 14, an application to consider a Class D liquor license for T&A Express LLC, doing business as T&A Express, located at 5825 North 30th Street.
Public hearing on agenda item number 14 is today. Proponents, please.
It's Michael Polk, 2712 South 87th Avenue, here on behalf of the applicant, and Mr. Tariq Ali, the owner, is here with me today to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 14. There are no lights. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 14 is approved, 7-0. Item 15, a request to appoint Ellie F. Novak as manager of Bemis Center for Contemporary Arts, doing business as Bemis Center for Contemporary Arts, to their Class IK liquor license located at 724 South 12th Street.
Public hearing on agenda item number 15 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, I'm Ellie Novak, Development Director at Bemis Center for Contemporary Arts, 1607 South 79th Street.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, Ellie, just want to give you a second opportunity to make a pitch for the Bemis, what's going on this summer.
Great. We have our next summer exhibition opening at the end of this month on June 28th, free and open to the public, to celebrate the opening of Sheila Pepe Hot Mess Formalism. On July 21st, we have our 3-time-a-year open house, open studios event, where the public is invited to visit with the artists who are in residence on our 2nd and 3rd floors of the Bemis Center. We have 12 live-work studio apartments where artists from around the world come to live and work at the Bemis Center to further their creative, all their different creative processes in a variety of artistic mediums. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to see the work of artists from around the world, and also to see the exhibition on our main floor of our galleries with Sheila Pepe. And then coming up in the fall is our major annual benefit art auction on October 26th. This event brings together about 800 artists and members of the public to annual art auction and concert, including work from the artists in residence, exhibiting artists, and local and regional national artists from around the world, or around the country.
Well, congratulations on another great year at the Bemis, and we're pleased to support your application. we'll sure you do a good job as the manager.
Thank you so much.
Motion approved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 15. No further lights. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 15 is approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
Item 16, a request to appoint Sydney M. Nan as manager of Joslyn Castle Trust, Inc., doing business as Joslyn Castle, to their Class I liquor license located at 3902 Davenport Street.
Public hearing on agenda item number 16 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, my name's Sidney Ganan. I'm the executive director for the Joslyn Castle at 3902 Davenport Street. Here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Jerem.
You know the drill. When's your next late night see Jocelyn behind the scenes tour? I forget what it was.
This Saturday, Joslyn Castle Unlocked will be open for business. So that's our next. Although we do have an event coming up Wednesday night, which is not a late night alcohol event. We have a free event for the public on the lawn for the study of bees in the neighborhoods in conjunction with the Extension Office. So, lots of public programming. We've got a masquerade coming up in October, which was a huge hit last year. Check the website.
Thank you. Motion approved.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded to approve item 16. No further lights. Roll call.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 16 is approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
Item 17, a request to appoint Jordan H. Wyman as manager of Pig and Finch OMA LLC, doing business as 801 Grill, to their Class I liquor license located at 10387 Pacific Street.
Public hearing on agenda item number 17 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, my name is Jordan. I'm the general manager with 801 Grow.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Harding.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jordan, just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood. I know the Pig and Finch is no longer, but now 801 is there, and I'll let you say a little bit about the operation, but before you do, I'll just mention that the lamb meatballs are to die for.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that. That's actually a Pig and Finch recipe. Yeah, happy to be here. I worked at Pig and Finch in Kansas City and moved back to Omaha where I grew up. We're a classic American grill. We got steaks, burgers, seafood. Really happy to be in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 17. There are no lights. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 17 is approved, 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Items 18 and 19 are manager applications for Walmart Inc. for their Class D liquor licenses and can be considered together. Item 18, appoint Taylor J. Beardall as manager of Walmart number 3153 located at 6710 South 167th Street. Item 19, appoint Kiara L. Bowling as manager of Walmart Market number 4139 located at 360 North Saddle Creek Road.
Public hearing on agenda items numbers 18 and 19 are today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Taylor Beardall from Walmart Neighborhood Market 3153 down in West O, real West O. 6710 South 167th Street.
Thank you.
Hi, Kiara Bowling, manager of Walmart at 360 North Saddle Creek Road.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Moved and seconded to approve items 18 and 19. No lights. Roll call.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 18 and 19 are approved, 7-0.
Thank you all.
Items 20 to 24 relate to Keno satellite agreements and can be considered together. Resolutions to grant approval to EHPV Lottery Service to operate Big Red Keno satellite locations for the following. The original Draft House located at 12411 West Center Road, Suite 101 and 102. The Getaway located at 4745 South 96th Street. Omaha's Finest Tequila Garage located at 4971 Q Street South. The Good Life Sports Bar and Grill located at 20231 Manderson Street. Burnsies located at 504 North 33rd Street. A's Communication Opposition.
Public hearing on agenda items numbers 20 through 24 today. Proponents, please.
Mr. President, members of the council, my name is Katrina Coffey. I'm Vice President of Marketing for Big Red Keno. We're located at 11248 John Galt Boulevard. I have with me today the owners of the locations that are here, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Moved and seconded to approve items 20 through 24. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 20 to 24 are approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the City Council Rules of Order.
The public hearing on agenda items numbers 25 and 26 were held on June 5th, 2018. We are going to take item 26 off of consent for discussion, so the only motion today would be for item 25.
So, second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 25. No lights. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 25 is approved, 7-0. Item 26, an ordinance authorizing and directing an issue of additional bonds in one or more series of not to exceed an aggregate principal amount of $80 million for the Sanitary Sewage System Revenue Bond Series 2018 for the purpose of providing funds to finance the acquisition, construction, improving, and equipping of capital improvements to the city's sanitary sewage system. A is amendment of the whole requested by the Finance Department.
Public hearing was held. Mr. Harding.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Curtis, I was wondering if you could just give a few comments on the changes that I believe are not substantive to what we're considering here today with the amendment in the whole.
Yeah, the Steve Curtis, City Finance, the changes were relatively immaterial, but I think they believed it was easier to do an amendment of the whole than attempt to go through and change each if, and, or but that occurred. What happened was the EPA's attorney continued to negotiate small immaterial points right up until the time we got this in, so the decision was made to just substitute.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the amendment of the whole. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Harding. Yes. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Yes. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda items numbers 27 through 39 are today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by your name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent. I think we have a couple of folks that are coming in.
This is on agenda item number 35. Matt Kuzy, City of Omaha's Law Department City Prosecutor. As indicated in my letter to the council on this resolution, I am recommending that the contract between the City of Omaha and the National Safety Council of Greater Omaha be continued for the first of the two 5-year renewable periods in there. I have expressed my satisfaction with the program that they have been running, and I am asking the council to approve that extension. Should any questions be needed of me, I will remain in the room. The president and CEO of the Safety Council is here if any questions are needed from him as well.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard on item 35? Are there any opponents who wish to be heard?
Pat Vendetti, 1235 Park Wild, Omaha, Nebraska. If I could have the members of the council please reference attachment number 5, I believe. Excuse me, attachment number 4. In attachment number 4, it simply states that Cornhusker Driving School's reapplication to teach the pre-driving or the pre-trial traffic diversion program is certified. And I've had that certification to teach. for at least 10 years at that point. And then, of course, in 2007, the contract was changed. And I was no longer allowed to file for recertification unless I had the signature of the city prosecutor. I went to the city prosecutor to get his approval. And of course, his response was simply, "We're not going to give it to you. We've already made a decision, and we're going to the council to certify the National Safety Council." You know, with that in mind, it's kind of interesting, Vinny and Pete and Chris, because I know you're familiar with an issue that we have in Little Italy. And that issue has to do with turning a one-way street into a two-way street. And you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with the pretrial diversion program? Well, there is a parallel here. We attempted to do everything we possibly could, and I'm talking about 250 people in Little Italy who wanted that street returned to a two-way. And that's when we met with you, Chris and Pete, and then subsequent within the last week, Vinny, with you. And of course, we were told that you have no control. It's strictly up to Public Works. So we went to Public Works, and we asked Public Works, why are you reneging on the information you sent to the neighborhood that you were going to return that one-way street to a two-way street when the project on 2nd and Pierce was done? And the arrogance of the Public Works gentleman said, it's not going to change. And then, of course, we asked why. And it was very simple, because he said so. And then, Chris, I believe it was you who said the only person that could trump the decision of Public Works would be the mayor. We contacted the mayor, and the mayor did not want to get involved in that issue. And I find it interesting today, I can't apply for recertification to teach the pretrial diversion program because the city prosecutor would not put his signature on my application. That's wrong. We should have that privilege to teach the pretrial diversion program. And I asked why. He had no response. He said it's simply because the Safety Council has done a good job and we just simply want one provider. When this new contract was made, and you all have a copy of that because I put the contract in your file, in 2007, the contract was rewritten, and I met with Marty Conboy behind closed doors at his request. And he wanted to know, well, Mr. Vendetti, how much are you going to charge? I says, I can do the program much less than what the Safety Council can do. He said, would you be willing to charge what the Safety and Health Council charges? I said, I will apply, whatever the contract says, then I would do that. And then I come to find out that was the formal bid. Is that a formal bid? I don't think so. And then I got word weeks later that the Safety Council was awarded the contract. But there was no formal bid, and that's the point that I want to make here today. There's no formal bid today either. Yes, Mr. Kuzy, you're right. It's not going to happen for the next 10 years. We can't do it today, we can't do it in 5 years, and we can't do it 5 years after that. And the answer is why? Why? Is this contract such that it can't, you're making amendments today to the contract. Why not allow other providers to come aboard that are qualified and certified? I contacted the state DMV, the legal counsel for the state DMV. Mr. Vendetti, we cannot accept your reapplication for certification unless Mr. Kuzy signs. Well, then if you look at attachment 2, please. Is that right? Let's see. Excuse me. It would be attachment 3. And Mr. Kuzy, I'll remind you, I'm not coming here to bid. I'm following the terms of the contract, and I'm not so sure that the terms of the contract cannot be broken. And it says in paragraph 3, the contract is simply up for renewal, not for a completely new bidding process. And again, I asked Mr. Kuzy why, and he would not answer that question. And I think it was something like, I'm not here to argue with you. I have to go by with what the contract says. Well then, Mr. President and members of the council, let's change the contract. Let's let the public decide where they want to go. This is a monopoly. And this has the fingerprints of the National Safety Council's attorneys all over it. I wonder how many of our city attorneys had anything to do with the current contract and the contract of 2007. And finally, in paragraph 4, how could it be? In paragraph 4, and Mr. Kuzi told me, well, Mr. Vendetti, you know, if you want to teach the program, you're going to have to reach out to the Safety and Health Council. And if they agree, then I would agree. Well, why should I have to go to the Safety Council? Mr. Kuzi and members of the council, you know, we've been a partner in traffic safety for many, many years with the Nebraska State Patrol way back when I started teaching at Westside High School. Most recently, I purchased about 10 years ago a rollover machine to show the importance of wearing a seatbelt. And it was a very expensive machine. And it was on TV. And the State Patrol said, Mr. Vendetti, we sure like to use it. The budget is tight. We don't have money. I said, I'll be more than happy to share the machine with you. As a matter of fact, I will park it on your lot on 100 in their headquarters on 100 and whatever it is, 108th and I Street. And I left it there for almost 10 years. And we both used my rollover machine, and what it does, it's a Chevy S10 pickup on a flatbed, and we can roll it at 40 miles an hour. We have the mannequin inside, belted, and the mannequin doesn't go anyplace at 40 miles an hour. We take the seatbelt off. Of course, the windows are rolled down, and the mannequin comes flying out every single time. You know, that's a significant and a very important point in our teaching in the classroom. And so many of my students wanted to come up and try it. Mr. Vendetti, do you mind if I go in and put the seatbelt on, and it would be kind of like a fun amusement ride, and travel at 40 miles an hour with the seatbelt on, of course? And I said, no, for liability reasons, we can't do that. And you know, this had gone on for many months. So finally I went to the drawing table and I came up with what I call the seatbelt persuader. I think it's important to put this into perspective because of all the accidents that happen today, 3%, only 3% are rollover accidents. And most of those rollovers happen at 50 miles an hour. The important thing in this is that the rollover accidents today represent almost 35% of all people killed on our nation's highways. I went to the drawing table and I devised what we call a seatbelt persuader, and I would like to, if you don't mind, can we do that? This is the seatbelt persuader that I've designed. And with this seatbelt persuader, what it does, it simply it's giving the effect of what it's like to be involved in a rollover. Not at 40 miles an hour or 50. This is going at a turtle's pace. But the student, by the way, the State Patrol has the seatbelt persuader. They saw this on TV, and they called me and asked me if they could come down and personally experience the seatbelt persuader. The State Patrol now has 3 of them. By the way, I do have a patent on this machine. The University of Nebraska has recently called, and 1 month ago, Ford Motor Company has called. And in this seatbelt persuader, there's a 5-point harness ensuring that the student will not be ejected or fall out of this persuader. And I think it's important to realize too that now, since this has gone across the country, this information, they have called me and they would like to have the seatbelt persuader at the National Convention next month with over 1,000 safety personnel from government agencies, from law enforcement, teachers in driver's education. And we will be making that presentation at the American Driver Traffic Safety Education Association, July 22nd in Rosemont, Illinois. And I just want to assure the motoring public today, if we could get this into the public classroom all over the country, I think it would have a lot to do with those 12 to 15,000 people that are killed in rollover crashes. And my goal would be simply to ensure that when they get in the car, the first thing they do is buckle up. And hopefully this experience and their background and with our Cornhusker Driving School would make that message very clear. And one thing more, Mr. President, members of the council, the position paper that I have before you, can I, if you don't mind, with just maybe about 2 more minutes, starting with paragraph 2 on page 1. Over the past 10 years, Cornhusker Driving School has been denied to teach the the safety training option program, hereafter referred as STOP. Contrary to the proposed resolution, attachment 2, paragraph 3, and if you would please, if we could go to attachment 2 in paragraph 3. First of all, the 10-year contract with the National Safety Council is not 10 years. It's more like 20 and 25 years with no formal bidding. There should have been a bid today. I don't know of any government agency that would be willing to give a contractual agreement for that period of time. And going on in paragraph 1, we have been denied the attempt to bid for this contract. And the reason being because there's never a formal bid. We have time before June 30th. We don't have to agree to this contract today. This certainly is not in the best interest of your constituency. And I'm saying to you today, allow Cornhusker Driving School to be a provider, allow us to make a bid, and allow the public to decide which entity, which school they want to attend. And is there anything wrong with me providing the program and I can do it $10 cheaper? And how could the Safety Council today violate the terms of the existing contract? And if you look on the attached in the new contract, in the proposed contract, they're raising their rates from, I believe, the current existing rate of $89 to $107. They're charging the $107 right now without your approval. And how long has this been going on? That's not right, and it's not fair to the motoring public. It's not fair to those people taking the class. And you'll notice too in the attachments exactly what their costs. And by the way, that's more than a 20% increase if my math is correct. From the current, I believe, $89 to $107. And I asked Mr. Kuzi for information regarding that. How many people took the class in 2017? How many took it in 2018? He didn't. He could not give me the final figures. He's the only person allowed to be able to go in and survey what they do and how much they take in. But yet he couldn't tell me how many people took the class in 2017. Oh, he gave me a figure of 6,000 people, but it didn't include the people in Washington County who are paying $115, and the people in Washington County are coming in to take the class. I suspect that maybe, just maybe, the Safety and Health Council should reimburse those people until you affirm the contract. And I believe at this point in time that'll be a decision up to the members of the council. And with your permission, Mr. President and members, I just have a couple of other things. Going to the last paragraph on the first page. Cornhusker Driving School was certified to teach the pre-trial diversion program from 1997 until 2007. And I believe I've discussed that. Recertification required Mr. Kuzi's signature, Marty Convoy, I indicated to you that I met with Marty behind closed doors at my classroom. And the way in which Mr. Convoy handled that, I didn't think was fair, especially later on when I got the word from Mr. Convoy that the Safety Council was going to be given the renewal contract. And I've got to tell you, I filed a lawsuit because I thought a monopoly existed. And we went before the district court. And I'm telling the district court exactly what I'm telling you. And the court said, no, let's not have a full-blown trial. Let's go to mediation. So John Miller was the attorney, was the mediator at the request of the court. And Mr. Miller, if I remember right, was part of this city council, and I think he was even chairperson. After the Safety Council and Cornhusker Driving School presented their sides, Mr. Miller stood up and said, this is a monopoly. The taxpayers of the city of Omaha would not tolerate this contract. And of course, the Safety and Health Council didn't agree. They said, we're going to trial. And I wasn't aware that mediation wasn't binding. Had I known that, I don't believe I would have gone to mediation. And of course, we went to a full-blown trial. And Judge McGill, in his wisdom, felt that the city of Omaha had the right to go into providership with only one person, with one agency. I certainly disagree with that, and I disagree with the contract that you have before you, with the amendments as well. In paragraph 4, in meeting with the city prosecutor, Mr. Kuzi expressed no interest in a second provider and was concerned that record keeping between multiple providers would be extremely difficult. I can assure you, Chris Jerem, if you got a speeding ticket in South Carolina, your name would be retrieved in 1 minute, and they would know exactly what your driving record was. Why are they coming up with this nightmare, I believe was the word that was used on TV. It would be a nightmare. And Chris, I believe I sent you a letter expressing some concern about that being an issue that would deny us application for this pretrial diversion program. I've contacted more than one tech person, and members of the council, I can assure you that that would not be a problem. And I am even willing to pay the entire cost for that transmission that would happen. And in the third paragraph up from the bottom, it talks about the new resolution approving new amendments to the contract with fees of the STOP program increasing from $89 to $107. Again, a 20% increase. And why is Iowa paying $115? And by the way, these should not have gone into effect until after you've approved the new contract. And again, the Safety and Health Council are in violation of this contract. I am not an attorney, but I've read the information, and that is my conclusion. I have not contacted legal staff, but I think I can read. And finally, Mr. President and members of the council, there is absolutely no legitimate reason to have one provider the size of the city of Omaha. And I request that you vote against Resolution 553. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, I'd like to ask the Safety Council person a few questions if we come down.
Yes, Eric Kepi, President and CEO of the National Safety Council Nebraska, 11620 M Circle, Omaha.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
We've heard good things about your organization's performance from Mr. Kuzi, and I have no doubt to question that at all. In fact, many years ago, I went through the program myself. I spent a week out there 2 nights.
Yeah.
It seemed like it, anyway. But it reminds people of the tools and things to make them better drivers, and it was a good program. Mindful, though, that we have pockets of our community spread from east to west, north to south, with people who are of fixed incomes, limited financial means, and your knowledge, or at least your organization's awareness that you have Mr. Vendetti, who can offer a comparable program at a lesser cost.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I would argue that the National Safety Council curriculum is nationally and internationally recognized as the best defensive driving curriculum in the world. So,
well, I'm not asking about your curriculum.
Yeah.
I've already
And,
told you, and if you could let me talk,
Absolutely.
and then when I ask
Sorry.
you a question, maybe you could be courteous enough to then just answer my
Thank you.
question.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
A little passionate. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The question had to do, though, with about cost.
Mhm.
And knowing that your program cost has reached the price point that it has, but there are individuals in our community who have limited financial means who are struggling to make ends meet. I'm just curious as to your organization's openness to participating with an entity who would have an accredited certified program who could provide a lower cost alternative to a certain population of the community.
Yes, I mean, we believe strongly that we're the best provider to provide this. We have been doing this for the city of Omaha since 1984. We have a world-class curriculum. We have a system in place to ensure that all of this runs very smoothly, that the tickets are held and dismissed correctly. I will say I want to compliment, one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about this is not only the safety aspect, but we have the frontline staff that works in this department that directly deals with the stop class have on average over 15 years experience doing this. We are really good at what we do. And it's so important that we have this education provided, and this world-class education provided. We regularly will review where the demand is for our classes. We've held them at the TAC building downtown. We've had a number of different areas. It depends on the demand and where you can get to. We're always willing, if there's an area and someone makes a suggestion, we're always willing to look at that.
But you don't make accommodation on the cost.
Well,
Is that what I'm
you know,
hearing?
the alternative that someone has is to pay their ticket. You know, and depending on their ticket costs, they could be higher or lower than that cost. I want to say, can I add one thing?
Well, I'll get there.
Yeah,
To answer Joe directly, the price is the price,
The
regardless
price
of
is the
your
price.
means, and as far as the safety council is
is.
concerned.
Yes.
If you can't pay the fine, then if you can't afford your class, pay the fine.
Well, that is correct. I will say that I don't have any requests that come to my office that I can remember of somebody wanting a reduced price or something like that. So, you know, I don't typically have that request. But I do want to add that the last price increase that was allowed under the contract was in 2013. So we have done no price increases in the last 5 years.
But for the person who lives in a poorer part of my district who's on a fixed income, they take their eye off the speed limit or speedometer and they get a ticket driving down Leavenworth Street, and then they're offered I think it's a pink colored sheet with the traffic ticket. There's a choice to be made, you know, pay the ticket, sign the waiver and send it in, go down to the courthouse and fight it, or call you up or register online.
Yes.
So I'm just trying to address the situations that exist for people who are of limited financial means, and what I'm hearing, just if you can confirm that, there is no alternative.
There is no formal alternative. What I will tell you is that if I was presented the opportunity that someone could not afford the class, and they could give some proof of their, we do scholarships in other areas, And what we'll use is free and reduced lunch. If a student qualifies for that, then we sometimes have some scholarship funds available for that. So if we were presented the opportunity that there was some way we could help someone out, remember, our mission as a nonprofit organization is to save lives and prevent injuries. So if we were presented, if I was ever presented with someone that they just could not afford to do it, then I would review that, because I mean we want people to get the education, and we want them to receive what we do.
But as a nonprofit, is that found anywhere on your published literature or on your website?
I have honestly never had that question, so certainly it is not on our website or literature. We would certainly be open to review that if that's something that the city council would ask us to look at. But
I'm just trying
I've been
to-
there 12 years and I've never actually had the question if someone couldn't afford it.
Well, it's something that interests me, and I just wondered what, if any, opportunities there were within your organization to address that concern, notwithstanding we have a provider who would be willing to do that. But thank you for answering my
We would
questions.
certainly be willing to discuss that. I appreciate that. Thank you for the comment.
I'd like to take a minute to talk about, you can sit down.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
The Cornhusker Driving School, it's kind of ironic because driving today on 50th near Leavenworth, there was a student driver in a Cornhusker car driving south on Leavenworth, and I couldn't tell who the driver was, but he or she just wouldn't creep 1 mile an hour over that speed limit. Thank goodness, because the car parked on the west side of 50th and the door opened. Because she was going as slow as she could come to avoid the collision. But it made me think about the organization in Cornhusker, and it's a family-run small business in Omaha. It is not a non-for-profit like the Nebraska Safety Council is, the National Safety Council that runs this program. But when I hear that really there's no advertised scholarships, there's nothing in the published material, they've never had anyone even ask, probably because no one knows they could, whether there's a program to address people of limited financial means. I don't know that there would be, for practical purposes for this program, any difference. But I know Mr. Vendetti, I know his daughter, shared coffee with Mr. Vendetti and his wife. They're good people. They're very passionate about their commitment to safety. But in this particular case, I was wondering, like he was, well, why couldn't we just, rebid this? And in talking to Mr. Kuzi, with whom I have a great deal of respect, and Mr. Kratz, his superior, the city attorney, it's because we're not rebidding this at this time. There's an existing contractual relationship that has a renewal clause in it. And as much as I'd like to see this choice given to Omaha drivers, particularly those of limited means that concern me, when I hear about classes that are costing over $100, it's troubling, but ultimately I'm going to defer to Mr. Kuzi and what he feels at this time provide him with the overall scope of all the different programming offered, not just in pre-trial or programming that's offered, but with other forms of classes like anger management and the different programming that they have at the Safety Council. I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Vendetti that the technology side of it doesn't concern me with his operation. But I learned of two things today, one of which I think I would recommend that Mr. Vendetti obtain Mr. Kuzi's letter of approval for, and I believe Mr. Kuzi is willing to do that, is for those who are in the court system, either in county court or district court, who then, as a part of their arrangement with the judges, get offered this alternative to go to this class. That's something that Cornhusker Driving School could take advantage of. They just have to go let the district court judges and the county court judges know that they're an approved program, and once in that system, they can get those appointments and referrals as part of that. So I'd have Mr. Kuzy come up if you could and talk about that, the difference between this program before the goes to court and the program that comes after, and how you go about, or Mr. Vendetti or others could go about trying to get that appointment approved.
The contract that we're talking about today deals with the pretrial diversion program. It's not something that the city or any prosecutor is required to have. I'm not required to have a traffic school diversion. We do it for a number of reasons, to give defendants a chance to go through this and not have their cases filed. It saves on costs to the city in terms of court costs from the prosecutor's office, but I'm not obligated to have this program. So that's what we're talking about today. When people go through the program, their ticket never gets filed. It's like it never happened, but it saves them the points and the conviction. There's the other traffic school where you're not eligible for our diversion program, where you don't sign up or you choose to fight it, or whatever your situation might be. And as a sentence, the judge can sentence you to traffic school. You'll still have the conviction and that still shows up. But if you take the traffic school class, that can save you on the points. So there's a difference between the two. The city's not involved in the court-ordered traffic school. That's done through the court system, and whoever the providers are, that's done through them. It's completely separate and distinct from what our traffic school diversion program is. And in terms of how you apply, I think you have to go through the courts in order to qualify and be able to do that.
Right, but in terms of the county court judges and district court judges, it's not uncommon, though, when imposition of sentence comes, that they ask the prosecutor, what's your position on sentencing?
Sure.
Would the position of your department be that the prosecution, the city prosecutors, would not object to the alternative of the traffic school at sentencing to a program if they went to Mr.
I don't know how many providers there are in the court system. There could be 1, there could be 20. I don't know how many providers the courts have, because they just order the defendant to go to traffic school, and they either go to traffic school or they don't go. I don't know how many providers there are for that program. So in terms of your direct question, I can't really make a blanket statement that we'll never object to anything, because maybe the person doesn't deserve to go to traffic school for a myriad of reasons. But in terms of if the court actually orders it, we don't care where they go, as long as it's a court-approved program. Right, we don't care where they go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kuzy. And again, I think it's important that we remember what, like Mr. Harding said earlier on that zoning case, we remember what we're here today to talk about. And while, you know, my heart is with Mr. Vendetti and on numerous fronts, not only because I know his family, I know his business, I know how compassionate and caring he is towards safety, I also have to balance the great job I know Mr. Kuzy and his office does, and supporting him in that capacity. And when he tells me this is what he feels is best at this time, is to extend this contract, I give that great deference. But I just want to find a way to get Mr. Vendetti and the citizens of the city a choice on this particular service. And so for now, I think since this is on consent, it's probably going to pass here shortly. At least I'd like to encourage the application of the county and district judges for approval to be for people who are sentenced to traffic school to be able to take it through Mr. Vendetti's Cornhusker Driving School. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pauls.
Mr. President, Chris, I do think you've come up with an idea, try to move this off center, because I do see two individuals who have spoken in front of us who are very concerned about safety and how they can help with the situation. Of course, my heart does lend a little bit to the small business person, because I've just, over my period of time here, it seems like the small business person usually has a harder hill to climb than if you come up here with a high-powered attorney and they know all the ins and outs. And by listening to some of the things that Pat has told us has made me want to personally investigate. I know a lot of times when we're frustrated, we do say things that may not be totally accurate, but I am curious about some of the comments that were made, and I will personally will check into that, because I do think sometimes in bureaucracy we do get trapped in that. Not because people are bad, it's just the way it happens. And I did pick up a little bit on that, so that will cause me to do some investigation. But I do like I think you are really trying to find a solution that will not only help the organization, but also help the private business person. I just have one question. If we have a contract and then we have a rollover, does that automatically mean, I may need this from an attorney, what does that mean? It automatically rolls over? Can the contract be rebid in the future? Because it does seem like we do have 5-year extensions. I think of now on our plan for waste, that was a rollover. I'm just curious.
Paul Kratz, City Attorney. Right, we do a 10-year contract in this case with some extensions. At the time of the extension, if the council doesn't want to extend it, or if the administration thinks it should not be extended, that extension can be denied, and then it'll go out for bid.
Okay, that's I was just curious about. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Kuzy, if I could ask you a couple questions, please.
Prosecutor.
Thank you, and I apologize. Sometimes we get these questions out before now, but I heard a couple things that made me think of something. One was when Mr. Venditti said that during the initial bidding process, it wasn't so much a bid, but in the resolution that I have from the past resolution from 10 years ago, it says, you know, whereas, and it gives the date, it says, after formal competitive public bidding. And I don't expect you to have this in front of you, but was there more than one bid for this contract 10 years ago?
I unfortunately, Mr. Palermo, cannot answer that. That was before my tenure as city prosecutor.
Okay.
So 10 years ago, as you've heard, it would have been Mr. Convoy at that time, so that was before my time, so I can't give you an answer to that.
I'm sorry, and if I'd have seen that before, I would have asked you, give you time to get it. Because I think what I heard was there was something mentioned behind closed doors and a bid was never given, and I guess we're not going to find out the answer to that. But another question, on the front page here, it does have a 20% increase in the charges for the class. Is that a 20% increase per student, or is that a 20% increase in which we will be remitted back to us as a city on fees for that?
Are you referring to number 4, where it talks about the increase in the
No,
staff
attachment 2 right here in the beginning.
I don't have what Dr. Venditti provided you with.
You can get that to him.
And I might need Mr. Weeson to come up and help me. Attachment number 2, yes.
First
and you're
paragraph.
referring to the increases?
Yeah, where it goes from $89 to $107
Correct.
per student.
In the contract, and again, Mr. Weeson's here to correct me if I'm wrong, in the contract, where the prices are included, it reads, any fee change of less than 10% can be approved by agreement of the authorized representative, so long as there are no added costs to the city of Omaha. So when Mr. Kepi told you that the last time there was an increase in 2013 was the last increase that was made, that was based on an agreement of it being less than 10% made, but it was signed off between Safety Council and most likely either Mr. Convoy or Mr. Smallheiser at that time. So it was within the terms of the contract because there was a increase of less than 10%.
Okay, so my original question was, is that 20% increase from the class cost from $89 to $107, or is it a 20% increase in what's remitted back to the city?
It is a 20% increase in the cost of the class from when it was initially approved back in 2008. The cost of what gets remitted back to the city is based on some sort of calculation between the cost of the class and what gets remitted back to the city.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question for you. And like I said, I'm sorry, usually these more taxing questions we get spelled out earlier. So the original contract was 10 years from 2008 to 2018. And then just so my math is right, because I've read this a couple times, and at the conclusion, which is now, it's up for another 5 years.
Correct.
And then after that, it says in the event, it could be another 5 years.
Correct.
So this is basically a 20-year contract from 2008. With that, if we're going to say that we're not going to put these out to rebid, then it's...
I guess all I can say to that is, this is the contract that was approved by the council at the time and signed off by the mayor at the time. That's the only answer I can give as to why there's 2 renewable 5-year terms within the contract, because, again, before my time, but
sure,
it was approved by the council and approved by the mayor at that time when it was initially done. The reasoning behind it, I cannot answer.
Okay, I appreciate that. Sorry for the question. So, I want to ask Mr. Vendetti something, if I could, please. So I know this is just going to be what you say, because we don't have anything from 10 years ago. But tell me again the bidding process 10 years ago. Did you actually submit a bid for this contract?
You know, I do believe that, first and foremost, would there be a record of that if I did in fact file a formal bid? There would be.
Clerks are nodding their head.
Because I know Marty Convoy asked me the very question.
Okay.
He wasn't happy that I was coming in with a lower bid. That's the bottom line. And that's when I told him that I would concur with the contract and follow the rules and regs of the contract. And if that be the case, and there is record keeping, is it possible that perhaps maybe we could wait 1 more week before a bid is taken, just to confirm this information? And Mr. Convoy, at that point in time, did not even give a reason as to why we couldn't teach the program. He gave no reason. It was just simply cut and dry. To think that this contract cannot be amended, you're doing it right now.
Okay.
You're doing it right now.
Thank you, Mr. Vendetti. What I would like to do then, and I don't know if this is the right time, but I'd like to amend this if it's approved to get rid of that last 5th year, if possible. Because 20 years is way too long on this contract. I don't know the process for that or how it would work, but I think 15 years is plenty long, if approved.
Mr. Our attorney want to do it.
Mr. Kratz, please.
Mr. Kratz want to do it.
Paul Kratz, City Attorney. Unfortunately, that would be an improper amendment at this time. City Council cannot amend a contract after it's been approved. You can't go back and change the terms of a contract, so the terms are what they are being presented to you today. You can turn down the extension, or you accept the extension and that other 5-year extension stays in there. And in 5 years from now, you can turn down that extension if you want, but you can't amend it at this point.
Okay, thank you. So we could say no to this and then bring back the contract for 5 years, and it still could go to the Safety Council
Well, you would have to,
with the new bid.
well, you'd have to rebid it.
Okay.
Put it out for bid. And by the way, I do want to add that when it was competitively bid 10 years ago, that would have been publicized, and people who wanted to bid on it would have had the opportunity to bid.
I understand that, but I just heard a different story today, so thank you. That's it, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to apologize in advance. This might be a little shotgun, but let me ask a couple questions. Does the court-approved program, I'm sorry, Matt, I'll ask you to come up maybe for this, and I'll ask it while you're coming up to save time. Does the court-approved program require a certification?
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department. I don't know the answer to that simply because the prosecutor's office is not involved in that process.
Okay, so then I'll go to the next, regardless of what the answer was on that, if it's required or not. Is there anything that that would stop you from signing a letter so that Mr. Vendetti could be a certified instructor, regardless of what this issue is here today?
He's never presented me with one. It's a form from the Department of Motor Vehicles with a number of various conditions and requirements on it. If he wants to present one to me to sign after it's been, reviewed by the DMV, I don't have any problem signing it. The conversation that took place between Mr. Vendetti and myself back in October was, I think he was operating under the assumption that if I sign it, then it means he gets to do the pretrial traffic school, and I explained that that was not going to be the case.
Okay. So just to back
but
up.
I don't know if that form is needed to teach the court-ordered traffic school.
Okay. But again, regardless of whether or not it's required, if Mr. Vendetti presented you with that after the state review or whatever the requirements are, would you at least consider reviewing that for approval?
Of course.
Okay. Okay. Then let me ask this. I think I heard Mr. Vendetti say that he thought the Safety Council is currently charging more than what the contract calls for, but then I thought I heard the Safety Council say that is not true. Is there some way that you can confirm whether or not that they've been charging that amount?
I'm going to defer for a moment to Mr. Wiesen
Okay.
to answer that question.
Thank you.
Ryan Mason, Assistant City Attorney. I'm unaware, I'm trying to look if there are audit provisions in the current agreement, but from what I heard in Mr. Vendetti's earlier testimony, he indicated that individuals from other counties and other jurisdictions were being charged different amounts. Our current contract that we have with the Safety Council only governs the jurisdiction of the City of Omaha. So to the extent that the Safety Council may have other contracts with Sarpy County or Potawatomi County or other counties, they can charge different amounts.
I understand that, but also the current agreement specifically states what the STOP program, the HAP program, and STAR programs rates are. I know. But I'm talking about the city, for the agreement with the city.
Right. Ryan Wiesen, Assistant City Attorney, under Section 2, the duties of the contractor of the current agreement, paragraph F, the contractor, which would be the National Safety Council, is required to keep the above described records and make them available to the prosecutor and is designated during business hours. So to the extent that the Safety Council does have business records related to this program, the prosecutor could make a request to review those records, and the Safety Council would have to comply with that request.
Okay, so I'd like to be on the record to suggest or to ask that the prosecutor's office do that to make sure that they were charging the right amount. Thanks. So then, I told you it'd be a little shotgun. So then I'll go off of something that Councilman Palermo came up with or mentioned. And it has to do with the term. And I originally had a similar thought that maybe, this was a few days ago, that maybe what we do is approve it without, and change it, taking that 5-year term out. But I would also think, and I'll ask Mr. Kratz or Ryan or Matt to help me on this, but in the agreement, in the original 10-year agreement, in the termination clause, which is Roman numeral V5, termination, says either party to this contract may terminate it by providing written notice to the other party 90 days in advance of the effective date of termination. So my first argument would be we're within 90 days. But I also understand that this has to take council approval, so I'm not sure, even if we're within that 90-day period, are we even able to do anything on that?
Paul Kratz, City Attorney, that'd be an administrative function where, I guess the mayor's office, through the advice of the prosecutor, would suggest that we cancel the agreement. It's not a province for this council to make that recommendation. It's either you extend it or you don't extend it.
So say that again. It's not the province of the city council to do that?
Right. The 90-day termination clause is something that would be activated by the administration and not by the city council.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification, because my thought then, Mr. Vendetti, was that if we can't do something here, as Mr. Councilman Palmero suggested, maybe we can do something in the future, but it sounds like our hands may be even tied on that as well, because it's not our province.
That's correct. At this time, obviously, you'd have 5 years from now to convince the administration that we ought to bid it out.
Or the council could vote it down.
Or could vote it down. That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kratz. Let me check my notes real quick before I yield. Just one other thing. So the only in this amendment, the only thing that is changing is we're acknowledging the extension that's allowable for the renewal option for the 5 years, but then the only other change in that is the pricing. Is that correct?
I guess I'll let Ryan answer that.
All right.
Ryan Weason, Assistant City Attorney. This amendment that's currently before you extends the term of the contract by a period of 5 years. It changes the price that is remitted for the stop class only, and then it changes the amount that the Safety Council remits to the City of Omaha from that price, from $41 to $45.06. It also strikes Marty Comboy's, the former city prosecutor's name, from the notice provision, and just indicates that notice shall be served upon the city with the attention to the city prosecutor.
And I would suppose it's the city's position that those are all well within the ability within the renewal option of that extension of the renewal option to make those additional changes.
That's correct.
Okay. As Mr. Jerem said, when I first got this too, and I tried to reach out to Pat, I'm sorry, I don't think I ever got a call back, but I also thought, well, why can't there be two vendors? But as I see from the law department, I think because of the current contract, I think our options are limited at this point. So I think I hope you're in business 5 years from now. I know I've got one kid that needs you now, and I have one that'll be there in about 5 years. But I think it's I think at this point our option would be to look at what could be done for the next renewal term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jerem.
Yeah, just 2 quick points. One, I think the big deal on why the certification is needed, even in the judicial part of the process, if there's a sentence for it, is because if you don't have the certification, then although you could take the class and be good with the judge, the points wouldn't come off your license with DMV if you don't have their certification. So I think that's why that certification is important. The other thing I would say is, if Mr. Wiesen could answer it, is where in Section 2 on the fees and fee increases or elsewhere in the contract are you relying upon the language to allow the 20% increase when the language in the contract says it's 10%, up to 10%. And we're told by Mr. Kratz we can't make any amendments of the contract. We can only vote on what we have in front of us to extend it.
Ryan Weeson, Assistant City Attorney. The contract by its implication authorizes increases in those prices by 10% without the approval of the City Council. That the inverse of that would be that there are increases that could occur so long as it goes through approval of the City Council. Additionally, this is a change that could be, I believe, bargained for, that increases the compensation, the consideration under the terms of the contract, and it doesn't just unilaterally take something away that was originally bargained for under the terms of the contract. I believe that that is the difference that Mr. Kratz was speaking about.
So are you in Roman numeral 2, duties of the contractor, paragraph 4 and 5?
Roman numeral number 2, paragraph 4, the last sentence, any fee change of less than 10% can be approved by agreement of the authorized representatives, so long as there is no added cost to the City of Omaha. The authorized representatives being the city prosecutor under Roman numeral 17 and an individual from the National Safety Council. The implication of that provision being that an increase of more than 2% would require council approval, because it couldn't just unilaterally be approved by...
The reason, thank you. The reason why I disagree with that is because when we had the other contracts that have come before us for renewals, there were attempts to amend to increase costs paid, particularly, or save money. And we were told, it was the latest one I remember, is the healthcare contracts a few years ago, and that had to go all out to bid if we changed the pricing. Because in the marketplace, the competitive bidders said that you were essentially letting a new contract with new pricing that we didn't get a chance to bid on. But if you stick to what the terms of the contract are, which allows up to 10% if agreed by the city prosecutor, then they're permitted to do that. I don't see anything in here that allows a 20% increase. And I think we're at risk for doing the very thing that our Mr. Kratz has said we can't do. So, Mr. Kratz, do you want to take a bite at that one?
Sure, Paul Kratz, City Attorney. As Ryan alluded to, the rule of law is that a legislature cannot, after a contract's been agreed to by the city or the state or any governmental entity, a legislature cannot then come back later on and negatively impact that contract. They cannot void the contract. They cannot make negative charges to it, negative changes to it that's detrimental to the contractor. In this case, what you're doing is approve the extension that's allowed for in the contract, and rather than doing something that is detrimental to the contractor, by agreement with the contractor, you're increasing the charges that they get to make. That's a distinction.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. To me, what I don't want to have happen is Mr. Vendetti leaves here today saying, District Court of Douglas County, the City Council amended the contract. They changed the pricing. And I think if Mr. Kuzy really wants to continue this for 5 years, and I said before I'm inclined to support him, I think he does a great job and he wants a single source, then we're at risk for that. The very litigation this time won't be going to mediation on. So, and then there's another thing in here is there's an outdated equal opportunity clause. I wasn't going to bring that up, but you know, could that be changed, or does this vendor get the contract of the old equal opportunity in terms of discrimination provisions that existed at the time that no longer exist because we afford more protections in our city to different classes of people? But okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we should take this one off consent so we can vote on it.
we can vote on the rest of them. Why don't we take this one off consent?
Okay.
Okay? Because we can vote the others. Yeah. Mr. Harding.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm going to pick up on Councilman Jerem and his thoughts. So I would agree that if you are going above the 10%, and this is to also what Mr. Kratz said about negatively impacting the vendor. If the vendor feels that that they can't live to the terms of the contract of a 10% increase, again, I'll go to the termination clause where it says either party can terminate this. So if that vendor doesn't think that they can do the business with the 10% increase, then they could cancel. They say, can't do it. We're going to cancel. Now, if the safety council is saying that they need to do the $7, I agree. That's above 10%. That's if that were the case, then they're saying that they can't do this contract, and if they can't do the contract with the 10%, excuse me, 10%, then they should have notified the city that they can't do that. So I guess what I would say is that if we're going to live by the terms of the contract, that we should amend the amount from $107 to $97.90, which is 10% above the current charge of $89. Okay, so less than. So let's say $97.50, just to make sure it's less than 10%.
Because lawyers shouldn't practice math without a CPA with them. Sometimes we draft things not to exceed 10%. Would be a way to accomplish the same thing. But I had thought about that previously, but I thought I heard Mr. Kratz say we're not allowed to amend. So did that also include amending what we're here to vote on, or are we free to make that kind of amendment?
I'll ask Mr. Kratz to answer that one then.
Paul Kratz, City Attorney. And maybe Ryan can help a little bit on this, but I think what before you is the extension, number one, and the increase in the price. If you probably have the ability to amend the increase in the price, assuming that the contractor agrees to that. I guess I'd go to Ryan. Do you have any different opinion on that?
Brian Wiesen, Assistant City Attorney, I would concur with that opinion.
He would concur, he said. So I think that again, if that's what the contract says, and if the current vendor cannot live by the 10% increase, which we have the ability to do, then I think they should have given us notice that they couldn't provide the services anymore. So if they're willing to do it for the $97.50, I'll make an amendment that I'll make the motion because we haven't done. Well, actually, it's on. We gotta wait till.
We gotta.
Yeah, we gotta wait till we do
need to
the
remove
consent
it from consent.
agenda. So
for purposes of procedure, should we go ahead and vote on the ones that have been with original contract, and then we can take the vote off of the
Correct. So 35 has been removed. I think we should take the vote on 27 through 39 minus 35.
Okay.
And then we can continue discussion.
Yeah, can we get a motion on 27 through 39 minus 35?
Except I think we better open it up to anybody else out here that
yeah,
may be here on
there are
other.
others, yeah.
We started with this one, so there may be other people out there. We should just make sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know, I was trying to get this voted on out of the way so that we can just handle this and get the other ones done. Is anyone else?
You actually opened the public hearing and closed the public hearing.
Yeah, I
on
actually
consent.
opened and closed the public hearing.
Motion to approve
On the consent.
On consent.
Through 34 and 36 through 39.
I don't.
Wait. Vinny still has his light on for this issue, so.
I didn't include this issue.
Yeah, we
I know,
didn't.
but we're still on this issue.
We're coming back to it.
Yeah.
We wanted to, what's the wishes of the council? Do you want to continue on this issue and then we vote on the whole thing?
But I think we should just make sure, because if I didn't catch that people could speak on the other ones, then maybe people out in the audience didn't catch it either. I didn't realize that you had closed it on all the other issues. I mean, I just think, just as a courtesy, if we could.
Yeah,
just
we can
ask.
ask if there are any other issues here that anyone wants to comment on.
On the
On the
resolutions.
consent
On
agenda, on
all
the
the other
resolution on the
resolu-
consent
on
agenda.
Anything else on the consent agenda we're voting on now? Okay, thank you. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that we didn't.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll move the approval then.
Well, Pete moved the approval of.
I'll
items
second
that- So it's been moved and seconded to approve items 27 through 34 and then 36 through 39. Is that correct? Okay, roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Now, we'll go back to 35 and are you done, Mr. Harding?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, President Gray. Mr. Weesing, please. I've already asked two other people, so you're the last one left.
Ryan Wiesen, Assistant
So
City Attorney.
I guess just to simplify this a little bit, we're not voting on a contract, we're voting on an extension.
An extension of the contract.
Okay. And, well, if we don't approve it, then it takes a lot of the questions out that we have. Although it would be a lot of work to bring it back forward. What's your opinion on the legalities behind the fact that there's been some discussion on 20% being out of the contract? What would it bring for you guys? Are you worried about that?
Ryan Wiesen, Assistant City Attorney. I believe that the council could, by amendment, increase the fees to the amount that are indicated in the amendment. If the council chose not to take action on any renewal, the contract would just expire at the end of this month.
Okay, and then obviously each extension has to the satisfaction of the city prosecutor and the final approval by the Omaha City Council. I'm wrapping my head around how we get the final approval, but we really don't on this one because it was already approved 10 years ago. And I don't think the Safety Council would give us any reason not to think they couldn't do the job. I just think there's too many questions
Ryan Wiesen,
surround this one.
Assistant City Attorney, you get the final approval because if you vote not to extend the contract today, the contract expires at the end of the month. That's the council's final approval.
And according to Mr. Kratz, we can't make any amendments to this, whether it's a percentage of increase or the length.
Ryan Wiesen, Assistant City Attorney, I don't believe that was Mr. Kratz's opinion or advice.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Kratz, we can't make any amendments to the length of this, do that.
Paul Kratz, City Attorney, what I said is that since what's before you is the extension, number one, and then number two, the increase in the price, you can make an amendment to the increase in the price. So you can amend that to whatever you want, since that's before you now. And with the extension, you can either approve the extension or deny the extension. But you can't make any other changes to the contract.
So we can amend the cost, but not the length.
That's correct. Your option to amending the length is to deny it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Melton?
Thank you. Well, and I just wanted to be clear, and Mr. Kuzi, you can probably answer that. This contract is not just the stop class. And the stop class is something that obviously you take, it's the pre-trial to get your ticket dismissed.
Correct.
But this also incorporates other classes. So we're not talking about just the stop class, correct?
Well, in terms of if you're referring to our criminal diversion program, that's a separate issue that's dealt with an MOU between us and the Safety Council. We're only dealing with their pretrial traffic school diversion program with this contract.
Okay, with this particular contract.
Correct.
Okay. And then I think just to have one more question, Safety Council, and I apologize. Thank you, sorry.
No problem, we've been here for a long time.
I just want to say, I think you've heard our arguments that there's some question here, and I had the same question because I saw any fee change of less than 10%. So I was, the math in my head, I was thinking this seems more than 10%. Would you have any objection, because that can be approved by us, but it still has to be agreed to by you? Would you at this point be okay if we reduced to that increase to the $97.50 that Councilman Harding?
So a couple points on that. The first is, I guess, our read of that and our understanding as we've gone through the contract over the last 10 years, that wasn't just a one-time increase of 10%.
Okay, well, this is what I'm going to say to you.
Yep,
You know what?
okay. I will
At
say
this point in time,
I will agree.
No, I've asked you a question.
I will agree.
Unless you just want this to not get approved.
No, I'm
I
sorry.
guess I wouldn't go any further than that
I
at this
apologize, I
point.
spoke too much. I will say that if the city wants to do that with the 10%, that we would agree to that today. I apologize, Ms. Melton.
No, that's okay. I mean, if this is something that you're going to tell me, well, go ahead and do that, and then next year I'm going to do 10%, next year I'm going to do 10%, then I think we need to rebid this.
No, we will agree to your term of, so if you want to do an amendment to the 97.50, we would be happy to do that. Trust me, we want to continue to provide this service to the citizens. We believe we do a good job. I have staff that are so dedicated to this. I want to assure you that we do this because we want to do it for the citizens.
Thank you. I just wanted the answer to whether you would agree. Thank you very much.
I was going to say the same thing to Mr. Harding because he had asked the question, and I was going to, if he had asked me, I'd have said the same thing. We will agree to the 10%.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There are no more lights. This has been really messy. This has been messy. And I'm not comfortable with the contract and a 5-year extension. I'm just not, personally. I don't know that I can, I guess when the vote comes, I'll make my decision at that point. But a 10-year contract and then an additional 5 years when we have a small business that can perform a lot of the same service is troublesome to me. Secondly, what bothers me is the cost. And even if we're going to reduce the cost, there are still people in some of our districts who can't afford to do that. In addition to that, when the contract was written, whether there was a bid opening or whatever the case may be, for us to sit here and guess at that ought not be how we do business. And so I guess, for me, I guess I'm going to wait until the vote comes, and I doubt, I have serious issues supporting this contract, but there are no more lights. Is there a motion?
I think,
Mr. Jeremy.
yeah, I think I would make a motion to lay over to the next meeting to allow the bid documents from the first time to be produced so that we know whether the process was correct the first time. Mr. Vendetti says he went into an office and then was told to agree to a price or you don't get it. And I think to make sure the public has confidence that this wasn't any kind of backdoor deal, we owe it to the citizens of this city and to Mr. Vendetti, the competitive bidder here, and to the Safety Council to show that the process was on the up and up, that it's transparent, that the records are in fact maintained by the city, accessible, retrievable, and capable of withstanding the scrutiny. So,
is that a motion?
I'd move the layover to the next meeting.
Second. Mr. Harding.
Thank you. I was also going to make a motion to layover, and I'll support the layover in part because, in addition to what Mr. Jerem said, as well as I'd hate to do the math on the fly, but we talked at least mathematically only on the 10% to the Safety Council. What we also have to take into account is what the city's portion of that is too, because by my quick math, I think it's the city currently gets about 46%, which is actually in the what's been proposed. The $45 on the 107 is less than that. So if we were to be consistent with the current contract, if we did 97.50 for the Safety Council, the city's portion should have been 44.85. So to make sure that we do the math right, I'm going to be supportive of the layover. In addition, I want to say that Mr. Vendetti said, just to reemphasize for the record, he said he may have made a bid, but he doesn't remember at this time. So I don't want to have someone at some point say, he said he was in an office and had to give it then, and it turns out he did submit one. He said it was recollection. He couldn't remember that at this time. So I just want to make sure we don't try to get him in a catch moment for something like that.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second to lay over 1 week. There are no more lights. Roll call.
Harding.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 40, a resolution to approve the Second Amendment to the Omaha Campus for Hope redevelopment plan.
Public hearing on agenda item number 40 is today. Supporters, please. Proponents.
Good afternoon, members of City Council. Jennifer Taylor, City Law Department. Before you is, and I will be brief since we've had a long day. Before you is an amendment to the Campus for Hope redevelopment plan. The plan area is, as it was based on the last amendment, but this has been kind of an ongoing redevelopment effort in this area since 1995. The plan area goes from 16th Street to 18th Street, Nicholas to what we call the Kellum Greenbelt. The focus of this particular plan amendment is in the southeast portion of the plan area, and it actually considers or contemplates about 5 different projects that will be undertaken in this area. First and foremost, what the plan intends is that we will demolish the existing day services center, which is at 16th and Nicholas. Secondly, we will work to remediate the site along 16th Street here. As many of you are well aware, this used to be a salvage yard. So there is a fair amount of environmental remediation that will need to be done here. Thirdly, we will install some streetscape and fencing and landscaping and trees, etc., along the Nicholas Street and 16th Street sides. Finally, we look to demolish the existing shelter building, the original shelter building at 1702 Cumming. And finally, and most importantly, the Omaha Shelter for Homeless Trust is raising funds in order to construct a 43,000 square foot new shelter building, which you'll see located right here. The new shelter building will actually lodge up to 350 single men and 50 to 100 single women. It's a very large and ambitious project that we're very excited to participate in. The redevelopment plan before you will allow the city to participate in this project in an amount up to $2.5 million through the issuance of tax-exempt redevelopment bonds. The city's funding will go to reimburse the Omaha Shelter for Homeless Trust's efforts to undertake both the demolition, the remediation, and the streetscape work efforts. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have for me. Also, Sue Morris with the Omaha Shelter for Homeless Trust is here for any questions as well.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Good afternoon. I'm Sue Morris. I'm president of Heritage Services and president of the Omaha Shelter for Homeless Trust. As you know, typically when Heritage Services does a project in town, let me back up, I need to give you my address, 10050 Regency Circle. When we do a project, most often we create a new 501c3 to facilitate and direct and oversee the development of a project, and that's why we have this 501c3, the Omaha Shelter for Homeless Trust. Dan Neary is also serving on that board as a director, as well as myself. This was a project that I know people are celebrating, raising their hands and going, it's time to come. I do want to let you know and remind you that it was 2.5 years ago that we were approached by donors in the community to say, is this a project that Heritage Services would look at doing? We've spent the last 2.5 years traveling across the country, looking at homeless shelters, looking at permanent supportive housing, trying to understand this really complicated challenge that we have in the community, but recognizing that at the end of the day, we think we have come up with a plan and a project that we can afford, that our philanthropists are now wrapping their arms around, and that we can partner again with the City of Omaha. This is a really good public-private partnership. I do want to say that we have set up priorities for this project. We do that with every one of ours. In this particular project, safety is our #1 priority. Safety for the women that come in, they will have a separate entrance. Safety for the men. We recognize this is going to be on 16th Street. That is a very busy street now because now we have about 1,000 trucks that go up and down that street. So we will be looking at some kind of fencing that not to keep people out, but more or less so that no one falls into that street or wanders, particularly at night. Durability is the #1, also a huge challenge for us. That's our second priority. We don't want to have to come back in 15 or 20 years and build another shelter. I don't think the donors in the philanthropic community will want to do that. So the cost of the shelter is expensive. We're looking at a total project probably between $15 to $17 million for construction and soft costs as we get done. But we expect that the durability in the facility will have a 30 to 40 year lifespan. And finally, our priority is dignity. Dignity for the constituents that are there. They're the least amongst us with so many challenges. Some of this we don't understand because we do not walk in their shoes every day. So as we worked with consultants and worked with persons who are really kind of understand and created best practices for our homeless community, we really feel that we're integrating these elements in that. I'd like to turn that over now to David Lemke, who is Vice President of HDR, who we have been working closely with and can also answer any questions related to the site plan.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
David Lemke, architect with HDR, 8404 Indian Hills Drive.
Thank you.
Here to answer any questions you might have, but also to maybe walk you through the site plan just a bit. I think Jennifer did a great job of kind of illustrating this, so I'll be brief. Again, north is up, Nicholas is here, 16th and 18th Street. The existing buildings are shown in gray, and the new shelter, 43,000 square feet approximately, shown in yellow. 17th Street is down the middle, and the entry to the facility will be in that position off of 17th Street. So any questions you might have, we'd be happy to discuss.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President.
You can take that down.
Let's leave it up for a minute if you would, actually.
Okay.
I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate you all sticking around. I don't think any of us anticipated spending as much time on that previous item as we did. But I think it's important we spend a little bit of time on this because this is a very significant project for our community. And I want to start by saying I'm very supportive and want to thank Heritage Services for the work they've done on this. It's not an insignificant commitment to do all the work and background you did on this issue, and for your donors to come up with the kind of money we're talking about, $15 to $17 million worth, including $2.5 million worth of city money that we're contributing to this partnership. So even on a day when we're talking about $250 million to the riverfront, I think it's significant to note that many of those same leaders and same donors are contributing to this project to serve some of the most basic needs that people in our community have. So we very much appreciate that. Maybe just a couple of questions about the timeline of the site here. So I don't know, Sue, if that's you, but we talked about the day shelter coming down and the site and the remediation and landscaping. Can you give a little more detail in terms of the expected timeline as to when those things are going to happen and then when that new building's actually constructed?
We anticipate that this building right here, the day shelter, the current day shelter, will come down sometime in the next 30 days. We're running into issues related to the College World Series, and we don't want to have too much disruption around that area, particularly with the hotels that are being busy used. I think, Councilman Gray, you asked a question at 10 o'clock, and I'm sorry I wasn't there, about what are we doing to replace the facility for the day services?
Yeah, what's going to be going on?
That's a really good question. It's ended up being very creative. We are bringing in portable classrooms. We have also brought in portable restrooms and portable showers. They're already on site. So the other thing that's really important, because I know there is a concern about the state shelter coming down, though, is that we have opened, the Sienna Francis House now opens during the day. You cannot be in the sleeping area. That's an area where they're cleaning and maintaining, and they don't want people in sleeping during all day long. But you can be in the shelter during the day. So the shelter's opened up, restrooms are available, showers are available, and I think they're actually maybe even considering other expansion on some of the meals and things. So that would be the first one to come down. We are fundraising right now. So actually some of the other people on our team, we're having fundraising calls this afternoon at the Sienna Francis House. This is a particular project, and most of our projects now we're getting to the point where we don't have to have the cash in hand, but we want to have the 100% of the pledges if we can by the time that we break ground. We've actually moved that date up. That date now, we've been challenged to have the fundraising completed sometime in October so we can break ground either at the end of that month or as early, no later than November 1st if we can pull this off. That's really important because if we don't break ground by November 1, we'll have another winter for the homeless to be in the shelter that they're in. So if this works out the way we are hoping that it does, the shelter should be open sometime probably around November 19. Don't hold me to it. That's what we're going to really aim at. But there's a lot that needs to be done right now in order to do that. So that building will go up. The Bayrite building, which is really where your shelter, where most of the men sleep, the constituents in that building then will move over to, and their shelter will be in the new facility, and then there will be some remodeling into the Bayrite shelter that will provide more formal day services in collaboration with other not-for-profits. And then the life of the building, the original Sienna Francis house that's primarily made out of wood, it's tired and it really does need to come down. We've had that evaluated by consultants and it really needs to come down at that point in time.
Okay. So the things will start happening post-College World Series, November 1st, groundbreaking presumably, and then ready to move folks in
December,
the following year.
November, December. We want to get them in before it really breaks hard for the winter.
And speak to capacity too. So what will the capacity increase
So there will
be?
be 350 beds for men. On an average, the Sienna Francis House serves about 330. That can give or take depending on the weather. But we only have 222 beds in the current shelter. So that means a lot of the clients have to spend time on the floor or on mats, or it's not a good situation. So this will have 350 beds. They will be bunk beds, just one bunk bed, not triples. And then for the women, that will be in a separate area that will have the capacity for 100 women.
Great.
And right now they're serving, I think, on an average of about 60.
Well, again, I want to thank you for undertaking this project together with the city, and I know we have several more approvals coming through Planning Board and to City Council.
Yeah, we'll be back.
So we'll probably see you again, but I think you'll
Thank
find a
you.
very warm reception. So I would motion to approve this item.
Moved and seconded to approve. So I have one question for you.
Sure.
Just in terms of the facility, the entire campus itself, will it remain a wet facility?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 40 is approved, 7-0. Item 41, an ordinance approving a redevelopment tax increment financing redevelopment agreement with Dine & Dash Lodging LLC to implement the Moxie Hotel tax increment financing redevelopment project plan located at 409 South 12th Street in an amount up to $1,931,000.
Public hearing on agenda item number 41 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Samir Patel, Development Manager at Hawkeye Hotels, 2706 James Street, Coralville, Iowa. I'm just here to answer any questions and also say thank you to the council members and the City of Omaha for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard?
Hello, Council. My name is Mark Von Drossik, 211 South 37th Street. I want to say I'm involved with an organization that's just been started called Omaha Tenants United. We're doing work about housing issues in the city of Omaha, and I've spoken here before about this tax increment financing and its appropriate use. I'd like to assert today that this development corporation does not need the taxpayers' hard-earned money in order to accomplish this venture. I asked a similar question last week. I just want to ask that this money not be appropriated to large corporations and to individuals who do not need this money. It could be better spent elsewhere For example, we had a great couple here at the very beginning of this meeting who started an organization repairing people's homes. And I would just ask, instead of $2 million for a corporation to build a hotel, which will probably be built anyway without that money, what if we spent $2 million repairing people's homes in low-income neighborhoods in this city? And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 42, an ordinance to amend Section 23-177 of the Omaha Municipal Code by changing the title of the class specifications for Management Information Systems Manager to Information Systems Project Manager with no change in salary. Personnel Board recommends approval.
Public hearing on agenda item number 42 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 43, an ordinance approving an interlocal agreement with the Omaha Library Board of Trustees and Douglas County to provide library services to county non-city residents and for the county to contribute to the funding of those services through a library tax.
Public hearing on agenda item number 43 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 44, an ordinance to approve the Lot B development agreement with the Metropolitan Entertainment and Convention Authority to establish guidelines and procedures for the future development of Lot B.
Public hearing on agenda item number 44 is today. Proponents, please.
Paul Kratz, City Attorney. I've explained to individual members of this council this Lot B proposal. I'll explain it publicly now. There was a group of individuals between the city, Mecca, and some private sector folks formed a committee to figure out how we can prepare Lot B for development. As you know, Lot B is a big parking lot just west of the CenturyLink Center. Through that process, a consultant was hired, developed a number of designs and requirements, restrictions for future development. We have created essentially 3 documents. One is the agreement between the city and Mecca. Second one, covenants that will be filed, and they're pretty much the same. And then the third is a executive summary of what the consultant came up with the various types of designs and proposed uses. The contract that you'll be passing next week, hopefully, has a number of items in it, or addresses a number of items. One is a replacement parking for Mecca for what we take out of Lot B. The need for on-site parking with any future development. The possible city incentives, which would be obviously TIF, occupation tax, and an entertainment district if so desired. We're also going to require that whoever develops the place present evidence of financial ability to perform the work. We'll also have a section in the contract that allows the city to repurchase a property if a developer doesn't perform. Let's see, there's a limitation on the line of sight. Traffic study has to be done first of all before any development occurs. There's some discussions on density that we'd like to see in that area. There's a requirement for some open spaces, green space, some landscaping, use limitations, which is what we typically put in contracts, and then finally zoning. In addition, as far as the process, there'll be an oversight committee, which will be a combination of some city individuals, private sector individuals, and Mecca individuals. They'll be the first ones that'll take a look at a development and decide if it meets these requirements, and then pass that on to Mecca. Mecca will then review the proposals and agree or disagree, and then finally comes to the city council, and the city council will be the last entity that will make decisions on any type of development and the various requirements. That in a nutshell is what you're going to be presented with. It's a rather thick document. It's meant to provide guidelines for the future, and we don't know when that future is going to be. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could even be longer. With other development around this town that's coming forth that you're hearing about today in the next few days, it's going to be probably at least a decade before Lot B has any development potential. So, other than that, that's my review of it.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President, and thanks, Mr. Kratz, for that overview. I think that's helpful for people to know. It is a 500-page document and a very significant piece of property in our city, so I think it is important folks to know exactly what this contemplates, and especially with today's announcements, how this might interplay with the future of the riverfront and these properties surrounding it. So as you point out, it's conceptual in nature in the respect that there is no development on the table for this property at the moment. This is called a development agreement, but there's no proposition at the moment.
That's correct. There's no development. We have not been approached by any developer. So at this point, it's merely guidelines for the future.
And it provides a framework by which interested parties, the Lot B Committee, Mecca, and the city would work together to get that accomplished.
Yes, that's correct. We did something similar with the Capital District. This is a little bit more extensive, however, but that's the same concept.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the property is city-owned, and ultimately, even in this redevelopment agreement, the city has the ultimate authority about what will happen here.
That's correct, yes.
And you did point out, but I wanted to stress it because I think it's important that it is included in here, because I'm thinking of another property downtown that didn't quite work out to our expectations and is still vacant. That used to be city-owned, and we had to try and claw it back. That should something develop here but not work out, we don't anticipate that happening, but should it happen, we have the ability to retract this property and retain city ownership.
We do, and we learned from that experience. But I will say with that property was transferred, but the developer at that time did demolish the old building that was there at quite an expense, so the city did get something out of that as far as a clean piece of property. But you're right, we do have a clawback, we'll put a clawback provision in any contract. This agreement requires a clawback provision.
In that case, what would that cost the city to recoup that property?
It would be the same amount that was paid to the city for the purchase of the property.
Okay.
That's how we've done them in the past.
And as you mentioned, it does contemplate an entertainment district, the occupation tax and TIF as possibilities.
Yes.
And then the city garage, of course, which I think has been the long-term proposition with the potential for this property and having to provide adequate parking for what would be our convention center arena, presumably Lot D in this instance.
That's the plan. In our original agreement, going back to the early 2000s or 1990s, late 1990s, we created so many spaces for the Arena Convention Center, and in that agreement, whenever we take some of that property back, we have to replace that parking. And this is simply an extension of that, and it would be a Lot D. Likely it would be a one-story deck of parking over Lot D.
Okay. And then maybe a final question for Mr. Curtis. So garages are expensive. I don't know if it's $12, $15, $20 million, and I suppose it depends upon when that might occur. But for Mr. Curtis, should this happen, let's say in the next 5 years, which is the foreseeable future, I presume the city could make that commitment, as we do in this document, without any impact to our property tax levy.
Steve Curtis, City Finance Director. I guess we'd have to see what the development is, but I think at this point, yes, we could. I think our property valuation is growing well enough that it's hard to speculate where we'd be 5 years from now, but I think it would be our intention not to raise taxes.
Mm-hmm. So the commitment to this garage does not concern you in that respect?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, Mr. Kratz, we've heard here today a lot about this is a template for future development. It's not something that's happening today, that the city's not in negotiations, correct?
That's correct.
As far as you're aware, Mecca is not in negotiations.
They are not, yes.
Nor is this private citizens group.
As far as I know, they are not, yes.
There's a lot of fear by a small but important partner in the city's development, and that is the developers. And the fear is that I have heard from people privately is the concern that the city would be picking winners or losers in the marketplace. And that because the city owns the ground that Lot B is on, that somehow this will be the city's priority to the detriment of others with what financing tools that the city has and the limited nature of those to the detriment of others. So if you commit your resources on Lot B, then they're not, and its development, that they're not available for someone who may be interested in the civic auditorium site or some other sites, whether they be in downtown, midtown, or in other places where those tools are available. So just want to give you the opportunity to, A, confirm there's nothing imminent, There's no picking winners and losers. It's going to be anything that happens in Lot B that comes will be transparent, public process as you've alluded to, so that people know that'll be the case.
No, you're right. The last thing we'll do is try to pick winners or losers in any type of development. TIF is always there for everybody. Occupation tax is there for everybody. So it's really not picking one way or the other. Any process will be open. People will be able to bid on the project if they so desire. So yeah, to that extent, if we can develop it, we'll develop it.
Thank you, Mr. Kratz. And I would echo those sentiments. At least while I'm on the council, I want to make sure that if Lot B is being considered for development, that it's done in a way that's fair and competitive and open and inviting to others to do that. That there's no hand picking or favorites that are being chosen. That, for example, if there's a process where somebody who's affiliated with one of these groups, whether it be the private group, the MECA group, or the city's planning department or the mayor's office, and they just happen to have their developer de jure that is their favored one, that there won't be any backhanded secret deal that person now is elevated to. You are the person and company who gets to develop this.
I understand what you're saying. Section 5.2 of the agreement provides that we'll go through an RFP process and an RFQ process to select a developer.
So when you did the Capital District, that was a similar process, correct?
It was a similar process. The city and MECA got together, went through an RFP process. We had, I believe, 3 people that proposed, selected the one that is building on that now. But it's a process and worked well cooperatively with MECA.
And there was one company, might have even been from Indianapolis, that participated.
I believe there were 2. That's right. There are 2 local companies and one outside of Omaha company. That's correct.
So, to the extent that there's fear or concern in the development community today, I think that what I've heard you say is contained within this document, and your representations, alleviates for me this. I don't share that concern because you've committed the process is going to be open and competitive and an invitation. So, thank
Absolutely.
you, Mr. Kratz.
Thank you. Mr. Harding.
I'll be brief. In addition to the processes, which I think are pretty clear and will be run fairly. Just touching on parking a little bit too. I know you said, and I think that's an important thing, and the agreement with MECA to replace that 1-for-1. Any parking that's associated with Lot B then is also not counted toward the numbers of replacements for MECA, our agreement with MECA. I just want to make sure we're clear on that
That's
too.
correct.
So any parking that's associated with Lot B has to be able to support the functions of Lot B and not be counted against the replacements for MECA.
Absolutely, that's correct. And we anticipate that there'll be parking garage on Lot B to take care of the people that will live and work and go to Lot B.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the other thing I think we need to mention too is that the Lot B committee, if you will, and all their work and reaching out to the stakeholders, which includes Creighton, CWS, and a number of others. I think we should commend them for the work that they did. Additionally, as it relates to going forward, back to the public processes, there will be plenty of I'm sure, opportunity for public to see what's going on and have input, both through planning board and public meetings as well as city council.
Absolutely. All those normal processes are still in place
Yeah.
and have to be followed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just one last question as a follow-up. When you describe the RFP process, who initiates the RFP process in this case?
I'll take a quick look. I think it's in the city in conjunction with MECA. It says the City of Omaha shall control and the implementation committee shall participate in and approve the request for proposals and that process. So it'll be the city process. City will control that with input from the implementation committee and MECA.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's all of them right now. All the lights are off. Public hearing is closed.
All right, non-action items, items 45 through 57 do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on agenda for consideration.
Roll call.
Harding. Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Festerson. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 4:53.